Please.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Morgan.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brooks.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
Yes, staff does have a recommended change to tonight's agenda. We recommend removing item 8D from this evening's agenda. That's the council parental leave item.
To be forwarded to a future agenda item. Okay, great. We will do that.
Excuse me, Mayor, would you mind if we took a brief 5-minute break? There's a tech issue and the video feed isn't feeding in.
Okay, yeah, we want to make sure that it's working.
Thank
So we will
you.
take a quick 5-minute break and return momentarily.
We have staff working on the issue. We just want to make sure it's working correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and resume. For those who are joining on Zoom, or I think also watching maybe on any other streaming platform, you won't be able to see any video right now. You will hear the audio and you will see the slides. And since we're about to go into presentations, you don't really need to see us anyway. You'll see the slides for the presentations. So we're going to go forward with the next two, or excuse me, item 3, which is 2 different presentations. And after that, we will reassess if we can get our video of the actual chambers back for those who are watching. All right, with that, we will move on to item 3, our presentations, and we'll start with item 3A, a presentation from O'Neill Sea Odyssey. Welcome, Tracy.
Hello, friends, Mayor Brown, council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do a little update about the O'Neill Sea Odyssey and just the opportunity to share our gratitude with working with the City of Capitola and the Community Grants Program. Tonight, I wanted to take a moment and just do kind of a high-level overview. I know we only have a few minutes of what is the Sea Odyssey about? Why is it important? Why is it important today? And the work we've been and the progress we've made so far. So I always like to start, the O'Neill Sea Odyssey is really about the ocean is your classroom. It is for all of us. We know, if we can go to the next slide, that the Sea Odyssey was started in 1996 by Jack O'Neill. He had this amazing vision. He used this 65-foot catamaran as a floating classroom, really knowing and understanding, first and foremost, that when you have access to the ocean, you start to build that care, that acknowledgement, that understanding how we are all inextricably connected to the marine ecosystem. So since founding, we've served over 127,000 students with ocean-going programs. We are a one-of-a-kind program in the region where there is no one else that is able to provide this opportunity to get students out on the water. We provide our program 100% for free, really first targeting students here in Santa Cruz County, Santa Clara County, and Monterey County, targeting those youth that would otherwise not be able to get out on the bay in any other way. Typically, we have on average about 50% of our students have never been out on a boat on the ocean before. And really what we're about is that idea that when students know more and they care more, they're going to do more. And we're really trying to get students at that age where they are at that fundamental spot, right? To know that they can build these memories. One of my favorite moments is when I walk through town and have people being like, I remember my time on the Sea Odyssey. I remember getting a chance to go. I remember now knowing why I need to pick up my trash. It is some of my favorite things to do. I always like to say, if anyone's having a bad day, call me. I would love to get you out on the water because you can't have a bad day when you're out there. But what we're really about is here in the city of Capitola, so many of our residents, so many people come here because of the access to the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. We see this from our backyard. It is what influences the economy. It what drives people to be here. And if we are not giving youth the opportunity to build that connection, we're missing a huge opportunity. So that's really what this is about. Next slide, please. So just a real high-level overview. When a class is selected to participate with the O'Neill Sea Odyssey, it is not just a field trip, which I think many people think it is. It is a comprehensive 8-hour field experience. We provide selected teachers with the tools to give classroom lessons, both in English and in Spanish. We give them a 3-hour field experience. And then really the cornerstone of this is, again, the Sea Odyssey is 100% offered for free. We provide this for the community by the generosity of our community. And all we ask of our student participants is that they pay it forward, that they get a chance to apply what they've learned with a community service project that is student-led and planned. So, next slide. So one thing I always like to hit on, if we can go one more slide, please, is just to give you a why now. Why is this important? The state of environmental education. And I won't make you read all of that because there's a lot of words up there. But back in 2015, the California Department of Education created a blueprint for environmental literacy, basically a pathway to help residents and individuals K to 14 understand what do they need to know to build that authentic connection to the natural world, and why is that connection important? Because really, if you look at the bottom there, what is an environmental literate person is about? It is the ability to act individually and collectively to improve and understand the natural world around you. And that is what the O'Neill Sea Odyssey is about. We're not just giving knowledge, but we're really reaching youth at that moment to inspire the next generation of civically minded individuals. Next slide, please. So what did we do here with the City of Capitola? Our community grant that we applied for was a 3-year grant, and we're working to serve, we had said, for 4 classes from the City of Capitola to provide hands-on STEM-based learning for elementary youth, both in formal and informal settings. So what that means, just to break that down, is to look at not just the classroom experiences, but working with the informal environments such as Camp Capitola and other after-school and out-of-school time learning opportunities. Really thinking more about strategically, how do we not just have the ocean be a one-time field experience, but a collective, a series of experiences that you can build upon. So over the years, next slide please, we've really started to build on and to think about some of this. We started in the first year with just starting some of the conversations with the recreation team, thinking about and serving the Camp Capitola students, thinking of the older ones that come out and are ready for some of those experiences away from the main camp. We started talking about how can we serve students when they're half days or when there are no school days. And we're starting to work with the instructors there and think more about how can we keep to build this out. Next slide. Last year, we served our 4 classes from Capitola. I think you're gonna recognize a couple of those faces up there, but we were served classes from SoCal Union and New Brighton Middle School. And as we look forward to the year we're in currently, we again have our 4 classes scheduled for this year. We have the classes from Camp Capitola as well as 4 classes from the SoCal Union Elementary School. If you want to go up, next slide, thank you. And as we're looking for this year, not all the students have come out this year, but as we're really starting to build out our vision for this year and going forward, we're continuing the conversations. The funds that have come from the City of Capitola through these community grant programs have allowed us to leverage these dollars to bring in more dollars, to bring in and think critically about other pathways of support to expand these services. So really what we're looking at is thinking more about not just the field experience, but we've been able to leverage these dollars for county core funding, for state funding to really enhance the professional development sort of experiences. So we're really starting to think more about offering hands-on teacher training, thinking about next generation, how can we offer more transportation scholarships, how can we continue to reach and eliminate any of those barriers that are going to prevent students from accessing the coasts and oceans that we know and love so well. Next slide. So one of the cornerstones, and I wanted to highlight this because I think this is really impactful. Again, cornerstone of the Sea Odyssey experiences are these student action projects. So of these projects that have been done with the classes that have participated so far, and these are just preliminary numbers, we're going to continue to gather more data as we go on. Next slide, please. Students have done beach cleanups. Not only have they done beach cleanups there here at the beach, but they've done campus cleanups on their school campus and in local watersheds. They've collected hundreds of pounds of trash, and we're continuing to look at how do we better capture that information so that we can understand the second tier of impact for students that come throughout our program. Next slide, please. Other projects included student public service announcements. Students then took the opportunity to educate younger students. They not only took what they learned, but they shared it with their friends and family. They went back to school and talked to the younger elementary age students, whether that be with a direct lesson about recycling, or maybe they were making signs to share at campus about Earth Day and how do we kind of continue these messages going forward. If you ever, I have some fun videos that I would love to share at one point of students. Technology is so readily accessible these days. They've made some really great PSAs that are fun to share. Next slide, please. So just to give a quick snapshot, the funds, again, that have been generously provided have covered about 50% of the costs associated with these programs. We then continue to leverage and fundraise through our donors, through outside grants, to fund the other 43% of the classes that are served from this area. And there is still more demand and need, so we're looking to kind of figure out how do we ramp that up even further. Next slide. Just to kind of finally summarize, right? So our outcomes, the things that we're really trying to improve and touch upon is that students know more, right? They gain more knowledge through the O'Neill Odyssey experience. They know more, they know how to take action, and they do more by talking to their friends and family. So if you go to the next slide, one of the things, this is from last year, we're just getting ready to produce this year's report, but this gives you a snapshot from how the Sea Odyssey really does start to make an impact. We do an evaluation with our students, both before and after the boat trip, during their experience, and we see on average at least a 20% increase in a student's environmental awareness after participating in the Sea Odyssey experience. This does not reflect here, but we have gone back 5 to 7 years later, and that number still remains high in terms of what they retain from that experience. We really do work to serve those students that are selected in the program. So they represent the community that we're in and represent the multilingual learners that are here as well. So we're really working to reflect who we are. And so last but not least, it's always good to know who's the Sea Odyssey. We are the education we need for the world that we want, for the environment and for the community we aim to build for ourselves. So I really want to thank the City of Capitola for your generosity and for the opportunity to partner with all of you. And I look forward to kind of continuing this as we go forward. Can I answer any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? No? Questions, comments? No? Tracy, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I have had the opportunity to tag along with one of the classrooms, and it's amazing to see these young people and how enthralled they are in learning about our natural environment. Just the work you're doing is truly marvelous. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are grateful for the support. And if you haven't been out, there's a lovely humpback that's right outside here. So if you get a chance to go, well, could just go stand on the coast. She's making her appearance.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Julia, it looks like we have video back. So just letting everyone know, you should be able to see us now, for better or for worse. We will move on now to item 3B, presentation from Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Hi, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Sophia Boylan. I am the branch manager of our Santa Cruz location of Vista Center. And I'll be sharing with you a little bit today about what we do for our clients and how we serve the community, thanks to your generous support. Next slide, please. So our main goal at Vista Center is to empower individuals who are blind or visually impaired to embrace life through the fullest, through evaluation, counseling, education, and training. We do hope to restore hope. The biggest thing that we hope is for independence for our clients, increasing opportunities, transforming lives and confidence. Next slide, please. Vision loss can be a daunting life challenge. Thank you. Some of our clients lose their vision gradually. For others, it's more sudden. But it can bring up fears about daily tasks, loss of independence, and diminished self-esteem, unfortunately. The number of visually impaired people living in California is expected to double by 2050. In the coming years, there will be an increased need for our services in this community. Next slide, please. Next slide. So many of the clients that we serve are seniors, 65% of those who are visually impaired, and 82% of all blind people are age 50 or older. Vision loss can be caused by congenital conditions, age, disease, or even injury as well. Next slide. So as I mentioned, Vista Center Santa Cruz is part of a larger Vista Center organization. We do have 3 branches in Palo Alto and San Jose as well. So we were originally founded in 1936 as a Palo Alto Society for the Blind. Locally, we joined with the Doran Blind Center in Santa Cruz in 2003. We've been Vista Center since then. And we also have Santa Clara Valley Blind Center, which is merged with Vista Center in 2018. Our largest branch is in San Jose. So as you can see, Vista Center has a long-standing history and legacy of serving clients in this community, and we're very proud of that. We are a full-service vision loss provider in the counties of San Mateo, Santa Clara, San Benito, and Santa Cruz counties, and beyond that. Those are our general service areas, but we do see any clients that need our help. Locally in the Bay Area, we serve close to 4,000 clients a year that have vision loss, and really see clients from every age, as young as 3 all the way up to 107. And those are real numbers. We do have clients that come for our services every week who are in their hundreds and happy to receive our services. Our diverse board of directors represents our community. We have many board members and staff members who do have visual impairments or are blind themselves. Our CEO, Corey Lyle, has extensive nonprofit and private sector leadership experience. She has a business degree from Harvard and is a great leader for our team. And those of us under her, the rest of the leadership team, represent a balance of experience and emerging talent. Next slide, please. What makes Vista Center different? We do extend support and learning after a medical diagnosis by providing personal plans for each client based on their needs and wants. For every client, that's a little bit different. So we really do like to meet clients where they're at and serve them in ways that help them meet their own goals. 85% of our clients do not pay for our services based on the generous support that we receive from donors and grantors in the community. And one thing that's very unique about Vista Center is that we do provide itinerant services in a client's home if that's needed for them. Many vision centers do not do that. Okay. Some examples of the programs and services we provide are typically starts with a low vision evaluation. That's the clinical aspect of what we do. And then clients in their journey flow into the programs and services that include instruction on daily living skills like safe cooking, assistive technology training, youth services, and also community services, programs that happen out and about in Santa Cruz County. I don't know if you've ever seen us in a community. I have a few pictures to show you guys at the end. Next slide, please. So how do we serve our clients? We like to take a holistic approach. There are both mental and physical aspects of vision loss, and our organization is happy to help our clients with both. We provide social and emotional support through things like support groups, physical empowerment, and help create pathways to goals, whether that's related to school, work, travel, or recreation. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the Vision Loss Rehabilitation Program is to support and teach the necessary skills to an individual who is losing or has lost their vision so as to maintain or regain their independence. Again, we work with clients on teaching them skills like cooking, self-care, home management, organization, safe commuting and traveling on public transportation and airplanes, staying connected to family, friends, school, work, and the community, and also empowerment programs for clients to advocate for themselves. So the service is funded by the generous grant that you've awarded our organization. Our needs assessments and counseling, safe and healthy living instruction, support groups, such as adjustment to vision loss is one of our support groups, and low vision evaluation and visual aids. Next slide, please. So some of the vision loss rehabilitation activities for safe and healthy living, just to dive a little deeper, include daily living skills, orientation and mobility, which is travel training, assistive technology, and low vision services such as evaluations and needs assessments for devices. Next slide. So in fiscal year 24, Vista Center provided services to 279 residents of Santa Cruz County, 21 of which live in Capitola, and 15 of them were directly funded through this grant that you provided us. Vista Center is the only provider of vision loss services, vision loss rehabilitation services, for the blind and visually impaired residents of the city of Capitola and all of Santa Cruz County. And one thing that does make us very unique is that there is no end date to the services we provide to our clients. We offer continued support over time, and many of our clients have been receiving our services for 50 years, 40 years, 30 years, and their needs change over time. Technology changes over time, so we're happy to continue serving them for as long as they need our support. Next slide. So just to touch on outcome evaluation, we do use certain metrics to evaluate the success of our programs. I personally collect these surveys from clients, and it's my pleasure to do so. We have a goal of 85% the success rate for our programs, and out of the surveys we collected, 100% of clients reported better mental health, increased confidence for daily living and mobility skills, and most importantly, increased independence and knowledge of community resources. Next slide. So the last couple slides here, I just wanted to include some photos of Vista Center in the community. This is one of my personally favorite programs. They're called Orientation and Mobility Walks, and a group of clients will go out in the community once a month, different trails, different pathways throughout the county, and practice their orientation and mobility travel skills with each other. And also receiving sort of that emotional support, as many of our clients do face isolation. Next slide. There's just another picture of our clients practicing their skills on the boardwalk. Okay, Vista Center board, leadership, staff, and program participants thank the City of Capitola for its funding, support, and community partnership. We really do love our clients, and we're very happy to serve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here this evening and for the work that you do. Questions? Questions? Okay, thank you again. All right, we are going to move on now to what? Item 4, additional materials. And it looks like we had quite a few.
We had additional materials this evening for items 8B, 8C, and 8D, which has been removed from the agenda tonight. One email was received for 8B and one letter for 8C. All additional materials are available for public review online in the agenda packet at the back of the room.
Thank you. Okay, we will go now to item 5, oral communications by members of the public. This is an opportunity for the public to address the council on any items not on tonight's agenda or on items on our consent agenda. You will have 3 minutes. Go ahead and state your name if you would like it recorded in the record. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, do this. My name is Janet Edwards. I live in an unincorporated area of Santa Cruz, but off of Gross Road, and I travel through Capitola all the time. And I missed your meeting on the work you're going to do on 41st, so I came to put in my 2 cents worth of the traffic I see on 41st. The first worst place is Claire's and 41st, and it involves northbound from on 41st and people turning left from the mall onto 41st. The cars go through the red light all the time, and a lot of times they stop in the middle of the intersection and don't move for a few minutes. They sometimes block not only the right lane, but the other 2 lanes, and even the left turn lane from cars going southbound. It's a nightmare, and it's frightening if you're going through there. My suggestion is that you start ticketing these people who stop in the intersection, and maybe people will learn not to do this. Also, I noticed today that the worst thing is somebody making a U-turn from going southbound, and they wind up for sure blocking that lane. And I know that people would appreciate it if that area could move a little faster. It's better than it used to be, but it's still bad. And I know it's the freeway. The other part is one that really affects me, and that's Gross Road going east to North 41st. And most of the people are trying to get on Highway 1 south. The problem is that light is too short. Sometimes I've even been the first car trying to go left, and I barely moved before the whole thing turned yellow. So it's terrible, and we've had a lot of traffic. It's certainly worse while they're constructing, and there are days where it can take half an hour to come from South Rodeo Gulch to 41st, where it's a minute or two on a normal day. So we would appreciate it if you would lengthen that time. When somebody uses the crosswalk, it's 25 seconds. Other times it's a lot less than that, like 5 or 10 seconds even. And it can be all day. Sometimes it's, in the afternoon, but a lot of times it's just in rush hour traffic. But we would appreciate some help. And so I will turn this in. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
You can. Thank you.
Hi, welcome.
Didn't do this right the last time. Okay, hi, my name is Terry Thomas, and I am here to ask the city council if they would please strongly request that the officers of the police department spend much more time on Park Avenue giving out tickets, especially while the ramp is closed for the next month and a half. Yesterday morning, I went out to pick up the garbage cans on the street, and I saw cars going at least 45 miles an hour, and I'm yelling at them to slow down. My husband's about ready to disown me because of it, because I do it all the time. But I shouldn't be the police officer, and you guys are missing out on a lot of revenue because you're not ticketing people on Park Avenue. Please ask them to get out there and do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
My name's Cheryl Ban, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have oral arguments and competition here. Commentary, I mean, get a little nervous. I'm addressing you tonight in response to the September 26th meeting about the Noble Gulch Dog Park. And staff made time to meet with the dog owners and gather their input. And yet, as far as I know, property owners, and I wasn't notified of a meeting or input. And I did send a letter, and I'm assuming the City Council and the Planning Commission got it. I didn't receive any acknowledgement of that or asked to be part of any meetings. So I just wanted to let you know that there was part of a piece from my perspective that was left out. Anyway, I wanted to make a couple comments, and it doesn't appear that there's any sound litigation being addressed in the proposed plan as I looked it over, and the quiet enjoyment of the property owners and other park users, I think, is at risk. If you've been to the park, you can see it's very tranquil, even though there's traffic and cars going by. The dogs bark. We all know that. They also fight at dog parks, and owners raise their voices, and there's neighbors. So, and there's two more thoughts that I have. We have the birds in the area been recognized and considered? Because years ago, there was a skate park that wanted to try and locate in the Noble Gulch Park. And the consideration was about the birds and the noise. So I just thought I would bring that up. Also, I realized the cost, about 80,000, depending on what is added to it, is a really added burden to the city and to the public, especially at a time when we're trying to raise funds for more revenue for the city. So anyway, I know it's hard to find solutions, so it doesn't negatively impact the neighbors and also the dog owners to have a place. I really appreciate this. Some ideas, because we're working on, especially tonight, for the Capitola Mall. Maybe we're envisioning the mall with a place for the dog park. Also, maybe Jade Street is being reworked. Maybe there's something to be there. Also, McGregor does have an existing dog park, and maybe that can be improved upon. So anyway, I really appreciate you listening and taking the time. And if you want to get in touch with me, I sent a letter to everybody. Cheryl Band's my name. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Marilyn Garrett. We've heard of 5G phones, cell towers, etc. Graphene oxide is a compound of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen in various ratios, which can be formed into ultra-thin layers about 1 nanometer thick. Graphene's high conductivity and flexibility makes it the linchpin of 5G wireless technology, as it is a super absorber of microwaves. Graphene oxide transistors are in every 5G transmission device. Frequencies in the 5G range operate at more potent power densities than those in the 4G range. A recent paper in Annals of Case Reports by EMF researcher Dr. Leonard Hardell indicates that exposure to the high frequencies and power density of 5G results in a host of neurological symptoms, such as tinnitus, fatigue, insomnia, emotional distress, skin disorders, and blood pressure variability. The references are here. Moreover, the high energy consumed by 5G cells is discharged into the air, exposing plants, animals, and humans to unprecedented levels of electricity. But there's more. Researchers in both Spain and the UK have found graphene oxide in the COVID vaccines and have observed strange transistor-like structures in the blood of COVID vaccine individuals, raising the possibility that 5G frequencies can communicate with the graphene oxide structures in the blood. Moreover, a 2020 study in Atlanta found the graphene oxide nanoparticles showed excellent selective sensing ability towards adrenaline and tyrosine. Now, let's put all this together. Vaccinated athletes pumped up in an adrenaline rush, performing in stadium environments of intense Wi-Fi and other frequencies, fall over with cardiac arrest. The last 2 years have seen over 1,000 such deaths. Coincidence? We think not. This is from Wise Tradition, Spring 2023. I'll give you a copy. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Council. I'm Matt Arthur. I'm a member of the BIA, actually board member of the BIA. I'm just here to let you guys know and remind you that about a month from yesterday is our sip and stroll that's going to take place down in Capitola Village. It's November 9th from 12 to 5. Tickets are going to be available in the community room just behind us here. $45. I know how much you guys appreciate and support the local businesses down here. It's going to be a great event. So this is a reminder just to you guys. Love to see you guys out there participate. but also a reminder to the community. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. It is a great event. I volunteered at several sip and strolls. They're a lot of fun. Hi, welcome.
Evening. My name's Karen Hanna. My mom was the founder of the Doran Resource Center for the Blind, which merged with the Palo Alto Blind Center and created the Vista Center. So it's something very close to our family. But I just want to reiterate all the great things the Vista Center does. It's such an amazing resource for a community of this size. There's so many, you know, with all the medical deserts that are out there and places where hospitals are closing and people just can't get services, the things that the Vista Center offers are life-changing from little kids to adults. My mom was a brailer, and she had a student from kindergarten all the way till he graduated from high school who did all his brailing for him and did things that allowed him to participate in classes to make him not unusual from his classmates. And he even came to her funeral when she passed. So it's an amazing organization. So I just wanted to say, if anybody knows anybody who's losing their vision, we have so many seniors here, the hardest thing about the Vista Center and the work they do is getting the word out, because people just don't know it exists. And so if you know anybody who is losing their vision or has lost their vision, the technology that they keep up with, having a low vision clinic in a community this size is miraculous. Because if you're a senior and they say, well, you have to go to, you know, San Francisco for low vision evaluation, it's probably not going to happen. So it's absolutely life-changing. So anybody that you know that you can spread the word about the Vista Center and what they offer, their office is right over there by Dominican Hospital, and it's just a great organization. So I appreciate the city of Capitola supporting them. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hello, good evening, Mayor, council members, staff. I'm Melinda Orbach. I just want to say that I was here at the Chambers last Wednesday. There was a candidate forum for me and Margot and Jerry, as well as Enrique, where residents got to hear from all four of us and what our ideas and priorities are for Capitola to make it a better place to live. It was a great evening of thoughtful and respectful sharing of ideas, and I'm so grateful for all the candidates for stepping up. Due to the love of our community. I think we're stronger because of it. For folks who missed that exciting evening, you can see it on my website, melinda-orbach.com. Also to report that last Tuesday, next door at the community room, we had a strategic plan meeting hosted by the city and Barry Dunn. There was a great turnout, great conversation. I applaud this council for having the vision to initiate that process, because it's the first ever that we're doing a strategic plan for the next 5 years in terms of what we want to prioritize. As with previous city outreach efforts, my biggest concern is this great idea, with this great idea, is the lack of public participation. So, you know, I've taken the initiative to include outreach for the strategic plan as part of my campaign. Whether I win or lose in this election, I think breaking down barriers to civic engagement is what I care deeply about. We need to ensure this effort continues, and I urge folks to go online and complete the survey. I was also at the Get Out to Vote, We Vote rally on Monday at the courthouse, and I urge folks to create a plan to vote. There are a lot of different measures on the ballot this year, and it takes time to really do your research and dig in. Some of the reasons why I'm voting is, you know, I care about protecting our freedoms to love who we love, to be who we want to be, and to do as we wish with our bodies, and to protect those around us who are disenfranchised, marginalized, and oppressed. Our next president will also likely be appointing the next 2 Supreme Court justices, and we know how important they are, as evidenced by the reversal of Roe v. Wade. So please make a plan to vote, y'all. Also, please vote yes on Measure Y. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Not running to get up here. Hey, you know, when you get to be my age, you just have to put one foot in front of the other. I am impressed. My first time here, I look back here, I call it a community table. I'm Richard Lewis. You don't need to know no board, no staff, but some relationships go back a long time. Can't transfer in 3 minutes what will take later more time. If you just take time to see the board and the staff of America's Promise, brand new idea, to fine tune, I'd like your feedback. Bring to Capitola, Capitola's promise. What is your promise to our children and youth? I'm here because I heard you've got a plan for over here at the mall. And so all I can do is say hello, no board, no staff. But with the police chief back here, we're going to introduce the idea of an initiative called End Crime Inc. We don't have to worry about money. We have to worry about next November, some women sitting and running our county. I'm not worried. Those who don't know me, my invitation, which is big, is only less than 100 people voted at Cabrillo for the student government. Take it local. Come over on Thursday yourself to student government and get behind my friend who was trying to create a strategy, we need help, to create a for-profit business, that's Ted Burke, that would put 100% of his money, like Paul Newman did, back to student government. So, look, I'm not a politician. Those that know my family, Bob and Jack Lewis, I'm the younger brother who never tried to make money, but that's Lewis Volkswagen. All I can do is, wasn't going to get up there. What a beautiful room, community. Let's make this table a possibility, but let's wait till November. So please, America's Promise, see the board, that's General Powell, and see what you can do to fine-tune the idea of what we could do at the mall in that former Red Lobster building. You know I'm going to connect and give me my vote when I go home. But come on, look at who's there, your neighbors. So I hope I made sense. I don't see, I got 25 seconds. In the history, the county is moving to a youth structure. How come Capitola couldn't have a youth mayor and a youth city council? It's up to you. Thank you. I'll be back. I mean, this is a beautiful room.
Thank you.
To all of you, peace.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Galen, you know me, but I just have 2 points this evening. One is I totally want to reiterate what the one woman was saying about the traffic. In my 4 trips in the last 2 days, I've seen a young woman go through Hill and Capitola right up Army Bay, right out Knob Hill at 25 miles per hour. She did not even stop. I've seen 2 or 3 cars that are going 30 to 45 miles per hour down Park. And even yesterday, coming back from Ace Hardware and Aptos, because someone wanted to get through the traffic, they cut into the newly paved center section that Granite Construction has put and cut through that construction all the way down to Park Avenue in 4 trips. Okay, so we have a serious problem, and we all know sitting here, it's not going to get better in the next couple of years because there's that much construction going on with Granite. So this city council needs to take some action and needs to help the police department with some policies and some things that we can do to resolve that, working with the county too. The second thing is, I think we're all recognizing that it's becoming trying times and really challenging for this city. And it has such a unique and quaint history and uniqueness to it that separates it from so many other cities across the country. So the bottom line is what I'm requesting for the council is after the election and moving into 2025, I'd like to see the council come up with a committee to evaluate putting some criteria in for running for city council. For example, I think you should at least have lived in the city for 5 years. I think you maybe should have participated in the Capitola city government course that they've had. Some of the things like that. I think it's too important for this city to just let anybody come up and try and run for the city council. I think you have to understand the city, understand the history, understand the volunteerism that exists, and appreciate what we have here and how we can continue, excuse me, continue it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments? Welcome back.
It was fun the first time.
Yeah.
I'm actually, again, greetings all, thank you. I'm actually going to make a statement with a different hat on as a commissioner for the Commission on the Environment. I want to make sure everyone was aware of a historic vote earlier this week from the Board of Supervisors banning all filtered cigarette products in the county of Santa Cruz. Part of that is it will go into effect not until January 1, 2027, but it is important that each of the municipalities really step up and also consider endorsing this and also passing your own ban in your jurisdiction. Cigarette butts remain the #1 item that is found on any public beach walkway regularly. Those little cigarette butts are made from cellulose acetate, a single-use plastic that not only infiltrates our lives and our lungs, but the lives and lungs of all of the inhabitants, plants, animals, and humans. It is causing so much toxicity throughout our ocean column and in our own lives. Annually, the county spends upwards of $2 million to clean up that trash, and those funds could be put to much better use. So I respectfully request that you consider putting this on a future agenda, and I appreciate your awareness of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, thank you everyone for your comments this evening. We will bring it back to staff and city council comments, and we'll start with staff.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Just one quick announcement for the council and for the community. We are recruiting for all boards and commissions right now. We would love to see more applications come in. So if you're interested in serving this city, please consider stopping by our website and applying for a board or commission. Get your applications in by Thanksgiving. And then I think we have a comment from our Public Works Director about, unfortunately, we have some relatively unfun news about traffic. Not our project, but we thought it's a good opportunity to inform the community about a pending project that's going to happen within our city limits.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Again, not our project, but will impact the west side of town. Unfortunately, county sanitation discovered in the past few weeks that they have a serious problem on one of their sewer mains on Capitola Avenue near the Clare Street intersection. So they have gotten right on it. They have Granite Construction under contract, and they are going to start that work next Wednesday, the 16th, and expect it to last for 3 weeks. So during that time, and when you're coming into town on Capitola Road, Capitola Road, you will not be able to make that left into the Clare Street loop there by the mall. There will be other times where the traffic will be impacted. We are working with the county with their traffic impacts and their traffic control plan. The clerk's office has prepared some social media to put that information out to the public. And as you may recall, we had a major CIP on Capitola Road last year, which the county will be required to completely restore at the end of their project.
Thank you. Any other staff comments? No? Okay, we'll bring it to the council. Council comments? Oh, just kidding. Not yet. All right. Hi, Chief.
I was going to say something good about the police department, too.
I just want, good evening, everyone, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to address the council and then the community. We have been hearing the outpour of the concerns up in the Cliffwood Heights neighborhood and all the construction that's going on Bay Avenue. We have increased our patrol up there, so we have overtime shifts that have been authorized. But again, this is kind of a Band-Aid with it right now. There's a tremendous amount of road work being done. We're addressing it. We're addressing it like with our new intent and overtime, but it's one of those things that we're getting back and rehuddling and looking at everything and looking at all the different projects and looking at it from a variety of different ways. But enforcement is one of those things that we've definitely stepped it up. It's congestion. There's a lot of frustration. It's gridlock at one point, and then there's people speeding just really abusing those neighborhoods. We hear the complaints from people. We're stepping forward, like I said, with our enforcement of it, but we need to look at this from a much bigger holistic, way, because it's a major issue. So if you have any more comments or questions with that, I'm happy to, like I said, we've been responding to all the emails and interactions, and then we're going to, at some point, have some sort of community meeting, but we got to get our heads around everything that's going on, because there's just a lot of different projects up there. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Hey, before you leave, would you be interested in sharing about why you have pink patches on?
Oh, yes. October is our Cancer Awareness Month, and so it's a pink patch. So the month of October, we'll be wearing pink patches in support of the cancer awareness. So all of our uniform personnel will be wearing that for the month of October, and the POA then will accept donations, and then we donate it to a local cause.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We'll bring it now to council.
Geez, we just can't catch a break on the traffic. It's not going to get better very soon. But what I'd like to give a shout out to the police department's social media. They continue to do the education on e-bikes, which is a big thing. Also, the traffic issue. That's another good thing they can do. They can put stuff out about traffic, and people can connect to the police department. So reach out to the social media for the police department. They do a great job of getting things out there for us. Thank you.
Yeah, my comment was just, I wanted to touch base with the PD I know we're getting an influx of information on different areas, and, but I'm glad to hear that there's some measures being taken. So I want to take that seriously. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would be interested in having some more information on the filtered cigarette ban come back to council, either from representatives from the county or other organizations like the Surfrider Foundation who are involved in that project. And I would also like to request that we look into an economic development committee and that be brought back to City Council. I know we had one at some point in the past, and I have talked to members of the BIA about that possibility and getting concerted efforts towards ensuring our fiscal health in the long term. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So just as a reminder to our community, we do have a strategic planned survey online. We've touched on it multiple times. We are trying our best to get that information out to you and delivered to you, just not in an online forum, but to every single committee if you're on one. Also, today was bike to or walk to school day. And I was really, really disappointed in our drivers today, especially at the Bay and Hill intersection quick build. I'd really like staff, Jamie, if you guys can come back to us or in a Friday update, let us know about all of the construction that's coming our way. One of the things that we have control over is Bay and Hill intersection quick build. And right now, I'm not feeling as if it's creating a safer situation for our pedestrians and our bicyclists at this point. And it really, really concerns me that it's not being as effective as we had all hoped for, in addition or in correlation with the on-ramp being closed and the bridge being closed. And I know staff has worked really hard on this, but this is something that is heightened. I saw so many people and kids today almost get hit at this intersection. And because I know council, this was our priority for safety, it's not feeling that way. And I'm hearing it from the community all the time. Even one of our police officers said he saw something in Watsonville where they're walking across the street with flags just to make it safer. There's some really easy things we can do in the meantime. But I'd like for staff to come back with information on all the projects that are taking place or are in the coffers to us, and to have this Bay and Hill intersection come back to council sooner than we had anticipated for. We've paused the study already because we're not able to collect actual data on if this is effective or not. It's just really impacting us more than I really hoped for, and it's not making it safer. So I'd like to see that. And then also we had 2 great presentations from our grants recipients. I'm not sure if all grant recipients have been notified that they need to report out to us. Okay, great. So I'm sure we'll hear from all of them as well. And then I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have a couple comments. I will start by thanking those who gave presentations this evening. I'm not sure that everyone in the community is aware of the diversity of services and programs that are available to us. And so I hope that by being here today and sharing what your programs do, that someone who might be in need of your services or a school who might be interested in bringing youth on the water will hear that and know to reach out. So I'm really excited that you were here today. I want to respond to the question about the dog park that was mentioned during public comment. It's still not finalized. There's still room for improvements. We're working on it, and it'll be coming back to council at a future date for finalization. We're not spending any money on it yet because we don't have it. So we'll be working on kind of fundraising in that regard too, but we hear you and please do stay tuned. We welcome your feedback as we continue in the process. In that same kind of vein of feedback and reaching out and whatnot, a member of the public notified me that a concerned citizen was worried about the benches on the wharf not being installed. The benches, I understand, that have not been installed yet are not installed because they are going to be in places where the food trucks and the bandstand were. And so they are to be installed this month, correct? Okay, so they are to be installed this month. I know social media can feel like a good way to blow off some steam, but if you're looking to make a difference, please reach out to the council directly. We would love to hear from you. And, you know, if you want action, we got to hear what your concerns are. So let us know. We're all here, council and staff. We are a city known for accomplishing great things together, so let's continue that reputation. And also kind of in that same vein about another comment that was made during public comment. We do have quite a few youth programs here in the city of Capitola that we're very proud of. We do have a Youth Mayor for a Day program. It's an essay contest that we're going to be hearing from our youth mayors in the coming weeks. We've got youth seats on our boards and commissions. We have a dedicated children's fund. We have a youth civic mentorship program that we just started. What is it? Liaisons. Yes, thank you. And then we have a Youth and Children's Bill of Rights as well here in the city of Capitola. So there's always room for more input on any additional youth-related projects or programs because they are the future, and we got to make sure that they're set up for success. And then finally, I will share, oh no, not finally, almost finally, I will start, I will comment also on the traffic that we've all been experiencing, the speeding. Just a reminder, let's all exercise patience and deep breathing and be good neighbors. I know it's very frustrating with all of the construction that's going on right now. It'll be worth it in the long run, but in the meantime, we're experiencing a lot of folks who are just frustrated, and so let's all try to control our own frustration and be patient with each other. And now, finally, Monty Fireworks Show on Sunday. Really looking forward to that. I apologize, I needed to have the details in front of me, and I don't. So can someone share with me the time that it will start? And I know that the beach is going to be closed. Chief, would that be you? Right after sunset. Okay.
Right after sunset. The beach itself is actually open. It's the wharf that's closed.
Oh, the wharf. Thank you.
Yeah,
the wharf is closed. The beach is open.
There's a buffer zone. I believe Hooper's is closed. But.
Okay. All right. That's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to having that come back. All right. I think that's it for me. All right. Okay, great. We are going to move on now to our consent agenda, item 7. All of these items will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below, unless any member of the council would like to pull an item from consent. Okay, hearing none, we will entertain a motion.
I can move the consent agenda 7A and B.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll go to item 8A, Netherlands Transportation Study Visit. Do you? All right, I know we had Vice Mayor Brooks and Kailash went to the Netherlands. Hi, welcome.
Hi, I'll be subbing in, but I don't
Great.
start this.
Yeah. So as many of you know, I recently had the amazing opportunity to join Ecology Action an Ecology Action paid trip as a city delegate to the Netherlands, where we dove deep into their bike infrastructure and how it connects to mobility, safe streets, and economic growth. To be honest, what was excitement at first turned into nervousness for me because I actually have never traveled that far from my family, and I honestly couldn't remember the last time I rode a bike. So, and also I didn't know much about Ecology Action. I thought maybe I signed up for some like bike cult or something like that was going to try to change. So, but after several planning meetings and a few practice bike rides, I soon became fully immersed in what I could confidently call a trip of a lifetime, thanks to Ecology Action. What I discovered is that building a more connected community like we hope to achieve as we're all living through all this traffic right now requires significant effort. I noticed that in the Netherlands actually face similar challenges as we do, with super congested freeways and dense populations and the same growth that we're seeing here in our county. So despite having efficient strategies and growing their freeways as much as they could, and robust train systems and bus routes, that just wasn't enough. And for decades, the Dutch have taken bold steps in creating what I was able to discover as really these beautiful walking and bike paths in this great network that you'll hear from Ecology Action in a little bit about. So they began developing these protected bike lanes and paths to create a more connected community, sustainable, and one where residents actually could navigate safely, as I was talking about earlier, and that people had a choice on the mode of transportation that they wanted to take. So if you just love your car and you needed to get on that freeway, you still could do that. But if you lived in a community as small as ours, you can get on a bike and safely ride to school, or you could walk easily to Nob Hill or to the mall. It was just really interesting to see and observe all of this. So today, the Netherlands is a living example of how smart infrastructure can improve mobility. I am no expert, but what I really was hoping to bring back here and to explore more was just creating safer streets. We saw the congestion in front of New Brighton Middle School today, and again, what we're hearing at Park Avenue. This is just not safe, livable opportunities for any of us. And so some of the things you'll hear from today from this group is about who they are and share a little bit about more of what we've done. And then also Kailash was able to attend with me. And so I was really happy that I got to go with an expert because they literally were in the streets measuring, like Kailash, did you bring the measuring tape? I can't remember who did it, but they were hopping off bikes and measuring roads and seeing if a car could fit with the bike lane. It was just, again, it was just really cool to see what were successes. I'll add, though, that with all those the current successes, there were many failures. And I know I mentioned Hilt and Bay today, and I know it's a touchy subject, but sometimes you have to try things to see if it's going to work, fail, and then try again so that we can find success in really creating a livable community that's safe for everybody. So I'll turn it over to Matt here, who will.
We're going to actually show a video first.
Oh, the video, yes.
And
okay, let's tee up the
thing.
video then. Thanks.
Dutch Cycling Embassy did a trade mission over to the United States. So we're here in the
Do we have sound?
California. And we are trying to improve the situational cycling in Santa Cruz.
Can we put a mic up near the
As we were
computer
getting to know
speaker?
the Cycling Embassy, it became clear to us that they do more than just these big bike workshops. They also offer these study visit experiences. So they will help you organize a delegation, mayors, vice mayors, council members, county supervisor, city manager, director of public works, planners and engineers across all the jurisdictions, and go to the Netherlands to
experience what all of those cycling principles look like?
I'm excited that I have this opportunity. I want to improve our community and really our quality of life.
I was just out looking at all the bike facilities and how they're integrated with everything. I'm beginning to get a sense of what it can be.
I want to stress that it's around 50 years ago, the Netherlands started with implementing dedicated cycling policies and planning efforts and investments, and that's the main reason why cycling is big in the Netherlands.
Matt, what have you learned so far? Oh man, where do I even begin? The use of color is coming through pretty strongly. They have the red asphalt they use all over, and it's a pretty strong visual cue for where to go on a bike.
They aren't just trying to eliminate the car, they're working with car management when thinking about ways we can manage cars to make the road safer for pedestrians and cyclists and make traffic better for drivers.
It's not just a single bike lane. It's not just one single route of bike lane. It's about facilitating the option to cycle from anywhere to everywhere.
One of the things I thought was really interesting, my takeaway was meeting politicians where they are.
You're trying to find ways to make people work together.
Like, work with what you got, in other words. And I think we constrain ourselves in
We
those
let
areas.
perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
You can't expect me to not drive when, like, the bus is full or there's no bike lane.
What kind of events can we do to show that, yes, it's a mode of transportation, but it also is a way to connect as a community?
They're not all that different from the challenges that we've had. They've just been looking at it for longer.
The goal is to create a child-friendly city, right? Because once you get these kids riding when they're young, they'll keep riding, they'll ride to university, they'll ride when they're older, and they hopefully will even teach their children how to ride, and that's how you get intergenerational change. You have to give them the alternative that has to be safe. You can't expect people to start riding their bike if it's really, really dangerous. With a roundabout, you only stop because there's somebody else that needs to go first, right?
Learned that it took a really long time to get where the Netherlands is now. What are the steps that we can sort of take to kind of like change and shift that culture? What I've learned is like we have so many people and we need to create opportunities and ways for them to travel and bikes is one of them.
1, 2, 3.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. Hopefully the sound came through. Okay. Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. My name is Matt Miller. I work with Ecology Action. I'm a program manager over there in our Moto Active Transportation team, and I helped organize the study visit here to the Netherlands. So I wanted to, for a couple minutes, kind of set the stage for why did we do this trip? Who are we? What's the context of Ecology Action? If you could actually go back one more, or go back to the previous slide. So Ecology Action, for those of you who are not familiar, we're a 54-year-old nonprofit headquartered in downtown Santa Cruz. We do a lot of different kinds of work, but our mission is to advance equitable community climate solutions in high greenhouse gas emitting sectors. And for tonight, we're really going to be talking all about the transportation portion of that. Work that you might be familiar with, Walk and Roll to School Day, that's something Ecology Action has been running since the 90s for the last few decades. Bike to Work Day, that's one of our programs. We do a lot of, in our transportation work in particular, we do youth education and safety. We do a lot of adult and community-based work. We have a planning team where we do active transportation plans. So we kind of have quite a mix of different offerings that we do as an organization. Okay, now we can go. So, and this has 4 advancements on this same slide, so I'll just give you a heads up. So a couple of years ago, we were presented with an opportunity to host the Dutch Cycling Embassy here in Santa Cruz. We partner with Gazelle Bikes, which is a Dutch company. Their North American headquarters is here in Santa Cruz, and they were hosting a trade mission from the Netherlands here in Santa Cruz, and they reached out to us about organizing basically a bike summit for 2 days. So we got together a group of 35 or so people from across Santa Cruz County and Monterey Bay to look at how would it work? What could it look like for us to actually unlock multimodal mobility, biking, walking, transit, and cars? How could it all work together so that we're not so dominated in one particular area? As we'll touch on multiple times throughout tonight, the Netherlands was all in on cars up until about 50 years ago. And then the people and the government of the Netherlands came together and decided there has to be a better way. And what is that way? And the last 50 years has basically been a demonstration of a commitment to trying to figure that out. And today, the Netherlands has actually gotten to the point where they're like, we've got this pretty well sorted, and now we're going to actually share this knowledge with the rest of the world. And so they host workshops. They will host you for a study visit. They have a range of things that they can offer to support other regions like Santa Cruz County to kind of help figure this out. So let's go to the next. So this looks like it's a view of the night sky, but actually what we're looking at is a heat map of bicycle infrastructure. And that big, bright top left, that is the Netherlands. That is all of their bike infrastructure. We can go one more. This might be a view you're slightly more familiar with. This is Google Maps with the bike layer turned on. All of the green that you see corresponds to bike lanes and bike paths. Let's go one more. And then this is Capitola. Similarly, looking at the green, obviously there's less, but that isn't to communicate like, look, we don't have anything going on. It's just it's to look at what the potential could be, with bicycle-oriented multimodal policies. All right, we can go forward. So who went on this trip? The final group was 30 delegates from across Santa Cruz County. We had a couple of bonus delegates, one from the Transportation Agency of Monterey County and AMBAG. But the rest of our 4 local cities, the county, UC Santa Cruz, the RTC, all attended and sent one or multiple representatives on this trip. We'll keep going. We had polled all of the delegates before the trip. What topics, what are areas that you really want to focus on while we're over there? And the list of 7 that you see on the screen here represent what this group of 30 were interested in uncovering more about. And we'll be kind of touching on, and really Kailash will be kind of looking at a few of these. We don't have the time tonight to go into all the detail, but we'll just kind of give you a representation of it. We can follow up later after this evening. So big picture headline, 30 of us from this region. We traveled to the Netherlands for a week-long study visit, and we really, really expanded our working knowledge about safety and livability and mobility. We have a lot more that this county now is aware of that we can, bring to bear in our local cities like Capitola. It's important to note that the Netherlands went from all in on cars like LA or New York or Bay Avenue with all the construction. And then they made a choice, and what they've gotten to now is that 28% of all the trips that happen in that country are made by bike. And if you ask people, hey, do you really like biking? The answer isn't, yeah, they're just like, no, it's just kind of the easiest and best way to get around. In a really similar way that we may relate to car driving. It's just like, no, it's just the best way to get around. But they have a comprehensive network to support that. And in the moment of right now, we have congestion, we have traffic, we have climate change, we have e-bikes, name your thing. We've got, a lot of work to do to increase walking and biking in transit and reduce GHG in the process. And it will require transformative and important infrastructure changes. And this trip just gave the 30 of us a much better view of how that could be done. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to Kailash to take through some content, and then I'll be back here at the end.
Thank you, Matt. First, I'd like to quickly thank Ecology Action and the staff behind the scenes that made this trip possible, as well as the 20 other delegates, including Councilmember or Vice Mayor Brooks. Everyone put in so much energy during the course of our 72-hour whirlwind trip with 10 to 12-hour days with meetings, presentations, tours, debriefs, and discussions. Everything went seamlessly. We learned so much, saw so much, and nobody got lost. The next few slides, we've pulled out a few key takeaways that we'd like to share with you tonight. The first here is looking at your community as a network. So this slide shows a simplified grid pattern of a community divided into blocks or neighborhoods split up by roads, trails, or highways. This network allows us to traverse our town, within our town and into neighboring jurisdictions. Whether we know it or not, many of our roads have an existing hierarchy, from slower residential streets up to collectors and major arterials like 41st, increasing in speed and volume up to as large as Highway 1. This hierarchical approach allows us to make decisions about how we make use and build out this public right-of-way. Questions we can think about are, do we want to maximize throughput? Do we want to keep speed slow? Do we want on-street bike parking, car parking, green bike lanes, bus routes, or sidewalks? Some of these are compatible with one another with proper design, such as elevated sidewalks along roadways, but there are also times when they don't work together. For example, nobody has their front door on 41st Avenue, and there's no buses going down Riverview. To help further this topic, next slide, please. To help further this topic of thinking about the network, I've brought in a couple slides from our general plan, which shows our neighborhoods on the left, and then our mixed use and commercial districts on the right. And so I think what we want to do is ask ourselves, which neighborhoods, businesses, destinations do you live or frequently visit, and what facilities are there? How easy is it for you to get between these areas by bike, foot, or by car? And what is currently working well, and then what could we do to improve the connectivity between these regions? An interesting example that we learned on the trip that you may have grabbed in the video was that the Dutch were able to take large, dense community districts and eliminate cars from being able to drive through them. They had parking lots on the perimeter and made the entire walking areas big promenades for sitting and eating and shopping. And, initially we were wondering, how do they make this happen with, such large businesses being able to take regular deliveries? What do they do about emergency services? And they have this neat opportunity to put in bollards that are accessible for those services so they can get through, and there's no hiccup to the businesses, but you're able to make that a very safe area for people. While these models may not work exactly here, this challenged us to think about what we could do. We already are familiar with the success of turn restrictions and speed tables to improve the safety in our local neighborhoods. Next slide, please. Furthering the topic of the network is focusing on the intersections. What do we do when those different road types come and meet one another, and how do you improve and kind of make those areas safe for all users? These areas are known worldwide to be the highest areas for incidents for traffic collisions, both with pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles. So throughout Santa Cruz County, we often see pedestrian and bikes facilities either taper or fall out in some of our intersections. In Holland, they've made a very concerted effort to provide dedicated space for all forms of transportation as you enter and work your way through intersections. And so what we have here, a picture on the top, is Wharf Road and Clare Street. So that was kind of one of our latest and greatest of improving visibility for all modes of transportation. And I think the feedback we've been given is that this has been a significant improvement for all user types in that intersection. And then below that is a roundabout. So I think touching on what Vice Mayor Brooks said is that you try and you exercise different ideas, and sometimes you find a good version, and then sometimes you end up having to redo it and come up with a better. But as long as you keep trying and working towards that progress, I think that's the mantra that they were impressed upon us when we were taking all those presentations from the Dutch community there. I'd like to advance one more slide and take a minute to focus on school zones. So given that we do have 2 school zones in the city of Capitola with New Brighton Middle School and then the preschool at Jade Street, we want to look at what's the intent of the roads that you have in those areas. And so another mantra that they impress upon us is that you want to design your roads for the behavior that you want. And so what we have here on the right are 2 photos. One is the photo of New Brighton Middle School at pickup time, and then a school in the Netherlands at pickup time as well. This is right before the bell rang for both of those schools. I think you can imagine what that both look like as soon as you have kids spilling out into those streets. What the Dutch have done over time is identified the benefit of reducing the ability to have cars in that immediate 500 foot, or depending on the neighborhood, what's the best fit for it, but trying to reduce the ability for cars to be as prevalent in those zones, knowing that you have that kind of more vulnerable community of children, often in high numbers and high densities in these areas. And so instead of driving right to the school, they encourage pickup and drop-off zones that are a little bit further out to allow walking and biking more safely in that immediate area around the schools. I think I'd like to take a few more minutes too and show the, start talking about the question of why. Like, why should we entertain these types of changes? There are, I think, two main user groups that I think are a good focus for us to think about when thinking about these, is both our children and our seniors. I don't know if it's been the experience for all of you in your neighborhoods over the last 5 or so years, but I've definitely noticed a big uptake in the use of e-bikes in both of those user groups, the children and the seniors. And I think it's great. It's getting people out on their bike, they're exploring our neighborhoods. And I think the question we want to think about is, what can we do to make that a safer experience to be continued to be used? Because I think those user groups are only going to intensify over time. And I think our task is to try to make that the most safe and easy way for them to also enjoy our community. One other question that the Dutch often provided us to think about is to ask yourself, would you send a loved one, I guess, to walk or ride down XY street? And if the answer was no, what would you want to change to make that answer a yes? And I think in our community, thinking about the different neighborhoods and the business centers, I think we could ask ourselves the same things. I think some of our neighborhoods are easy to get between and safe to feel like you can get between, and others might have gaps in the system that we might be able to make or address. Beyond the safety and the communities, more walking and biking also ends up with people with improved mental and physical health and well-being. I know, for a personal example, I definitely feel better when I walk into the office after I've ridden to work rather than when I've driven to work. And then let's advance one more slide. And then another big question as to answer the question of why is the reason why is you end up with the safest streets in the world. And that's what the Netherlands has done with this concerted effort over time. The bar graphs are kind of hard to read, but on the left is the United States. Immediately next to that is the Netherlands. And then the other 3 countries are those that have had the opportunity to be and model some of the work that's been achieved in the Netherlands. And so they're trailing fairly close to the Netherlands. And I think this represents an opportunity for where we can work towards and strive for safer streets for all user groups. I believe Santa Cruz County has a unique character as being kind of a small town USA with huge metropolitan areas around us. And so I think we have an opportunity to set an example. On to the next slide, please. I think the big takeaways we wanted to kind of focus on here is that we want to make our community safer and more user-friendly for all of our residents and visitors. I think this is a shared goal that we can all get behind. And in working towards that goal, the result will be a more livable community that attracts and boosts economic development and quality of life. The fact that all of our jurisdictions, as Matt explained, went and shared in this experience has already resulted in cross-collaboration between our different jurisdictions. And I'm excited to see how we can collectively guide our path and see how this story plays out. For the next steps, I'd like to hand this back to Matt.
Thank you, Kailash. So obviously that was really just the very beginning, right? That was just the tip of the iceberg. So after this evening, Public Works staff and myself and members of my team would like to meet with members of council just to be able to talk in a little more detail, larger format about where some of these lessons that we learned could be applied in a local context. I think there's a lot of really good material that we can look at together. And then Ecology Action is going to be, from here, continuing to organize this cohort that we formed for this study visit. We weren't sure if it was just going to be a visit and then everyone goes back to their jobs and we say thanks and good luck out there. And what became clear when we got back together is that the collaboration and the cohort that we built, this cross-county jurisdiction collaboration, feels really supportive, and it feels like the kind of energy and knowledge sharing and resource and capacity building that this county can all really benefit from, especially smaller jurisdictions like Capitola and Scotts Valley. So we're going to be reconvening the delegation in December for a meeting to look at what have we done since we got back, what are we thinking about for 2025, what can we each share with each other, do some design review, and really just kind of keep and elevate the work being done across the county. And we'll help organize and keep that momentum moving forward. And of course, because we've got our delegates here from Capitola, you'll be able to kind of stay apprised of what's going on, and we'd be happy to come back at any time and provide updates too. But for now, thank you for the time, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Matt. And, and what I'll just add in closing is that we have the opportunity as council members to make this a priority in our goals in our next session or in our planning session. And I've reached out, and Matt and I have talked about well, this kind of stuff takes money and paint costs money, and looking at different opportunities for us to seek funding in order to get some of these projects done. My hope is to see the front of New Brighton become a safer place for our students and our residents to get through, as well as the whole Bay Avenue corridor with a consistent bike lane that's wider, that's safer for e-bikes and can slow our cars down. So, I appreciate you meeting with council in the future here and council making this a priority for our community. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Yvette.
Yeah, this is a pretty open-ended question, but I think during the presentation we saw a lot of very inspiring systems for bicycles and pedestrians, and I'm wondering if either of you took away any innovative insight into how to actually accomplish that. From what were the strategies that they used to go from car-centric to bicycle and pedestrian-centric?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite literally a book on it. So they tried and failed a few times. When they started this work in the late 70s, they came out with a few early bike plans that flopped. And they went back to the drawing board, and on their third try, they developed a really successful bike plan in the town of Delft, which we visited on a study visit. It's 100,000 people. It's a university town. And one of the keys to their success was getting 4,700 households providing commentary on the bike plan. But all of the lessons that they got out of those first couple of years, they put together into what they call the Crow Manual, which is basically the book on how to do this across the Netherlands. And it's been iterated and updated since the early 80s and really provides down to incredibly granular detail, like what kind of gutter pans do you want, as well as like community engagement. It provides kind of a blueprint for that. But to also kind of give you something more substantive in the moment, I think a few of the things that we learned was we're going to get it wrong, we're going to mess up. But the biggest thing that they did is that they kept at it. They didn't just say, this is too hard and complicated, sorry. Like, we're just going to, go with the status quo. I think a couple things that we felt like were low-hanging fruit is really just appreciating the speed of travel and the speed of traffic on our roads. And that speed is the primary feeling that creates feelings of unsafety on the roadway. If you're on you can just think of like quiet neighborhood roads in Capitola where there are cars and people walking and biking. But if the speeds are low enough, it doesn't necessarily feel unsafe. It feels like you can negotiate, make eye contact, use hand signals. But when you get out to bigger roads and the speeds pick up and the volumes pick up, that's when people are like, no way, I don't want to be out there. You have e-bikes now in the mix going faster speeds. So I think the Netherlands have really looked hard at how do you address speed on all your different types of roads and then accommodate that. So in the neighborhood setting, some of it's just built in, like Riverview. You just can't go fast on that road no matter what you do, right? It's narrow. On other roads, they put physical separation. So like on 41st Avenue, that's an example. In the Netherlands, that road would have physical separation between cars and bikes just by virtue of how fast cars are going. And that's just that they do that across the board. And so that, I think, appreciation of speed results in really clear road types, and they do that everywhere. And then as soon as it feels comfortable, people start walking and biking, and then it kind of creates its own feedback loop. And there's like about 5,000 other things to say, but that just kind of gives you a sense. And again, we'd love to follow up and, have a little more time to talk through all this.
And Councilmember Peterson, Kailash and I talked a lot about this, about just the outreach and the importance of education around this. You can't just do it. And that's what we heard loud and clear from the representatives there and the folks that actually did the work. They created an entire campaign. Like, you turn the TV on and there are commercials about safe biking. And this is their life. This is everyday lifestyle for them. And they still continue that message. The schools have the educational component. Ecology Action does this already with educating students on safe biking, but then it's the entire community learning about this and having buy-in and input. Because if we're going to make any changes to a community like Cliffwood Heights where we live, we need the community to understand and buy into that in that message. So
Yeah, and I think really important to our understanding, and I think kind of an epiphany that we had on the trip was their goal isn't to go get more people walking and biking. Their goal is to create safe, highly mobile, attractive, livable places where it's logical that you walk or bike, not where it's like, I might get hurt or my kid might get hurt if they go out there. So the result is they invest in a kind of a holistic approach where walking and biking is just one of the tools, but they're not just out there trying to get the number of bikes up. They're trying to create livable, safe places. And I think that was definitely a reorientation for us while we were over there. But you can see it bear out everywhere. You've got all stripes, all ages, all abilities that are out using the roads.
I do have a question for any of you. We've talked about e-bikes forever now. So what was it like there? Was e-bikes the main choice, or were people using regular bikes? Or
Yeah, great question. So, just to kind of give you a sense of scale, in the Netherlands, there's 18 million people who live there, and there's like 1.3 bikes per person in that country. There's a lot. And they've been at it for decades. So e-bikes are gaining traction and are far more popular, and I think they're outpacing in terms of sales, but they still only represent less than 20% of the bikes that were out there. And they are absolutely experiencing a lot of the issues that we are, in the sense that they built infrastructure around sort of a paradigm of speed and size, and now there's this new element that doesn't really fit in the road, but also doesn't really fit in the bike lane. So they're grappling with this too, and they're even thinking like, do we need e-bike specific infrastructure that's somewhere in between? For what it's worth, we kind of have the benefit of we still have a lot of bike facilities to build to begin with. So how can we think about maybe setting standards that accommodate what we know is probably going to continue, which are, e-bikes are popular with all ages and abilities. Yeah. So they're grappling with it. Nobody's figured it out yet. Yeah.
I'd like to find out how we can get this philosophy of bikes versus we're having this Bay Avenue Hill Street problem because of people can't get through the intersection fast enough. But it is safer for bicyclists right now if they're following the law. Like you said there was problems and it was dangerous. That's only because people aren't following the law. So how do we get that philosophy to our motorists so that we can have more places where bikes are safer and pedestrians?
Yeah, that's another really great point. Our current transportation system is predicated on perfect human behavior. If everybody does everything right and stops and isn't distracted, we're going to be fine. Then we're human, right? We make mistakes, we're distracted, we're having a hard time, we're running late for something. So the Dutch approach is that people are going to make mistakes. So you build that mistakes will happen into your environment and you create a more forgiving landscape. So for example, they're on a countrywide campaign to remove traffic lights and replace them with roundabouts, because if you decide you're going to ignore the stop sign, you can drive through an intersection and nothing will stop you and you might hit somebody else that's here. In a roundabout setting, if you decide to keep going, you're going to hit the middle of the roundabout, right? You have to slow down, you have to make a turn in and out. And so there's a lot of psychology built into what kind of design will help the behavior that we're after, which is ultimately safety, right?
What I care about is getting from Highway 1 to their house, and they don't worry about anything else.
Right. So we have to have roads designed that encourages the behavior that we want, because if it's just a sign, people will, in many cases, ignore the sign. Yeah. Good point, though.
I think my question was much in alignment with Councilmember Clark about kind of the psychology of these changes. And I don't know who this question's for, or if we even have an answer right now, but the idea of designing for the behavior you want. And I think, as mentioned, that's what we were hoping for with the Bay Hill. And there was a lot of anger, right? We have a very fast culture. If we're not going fast, it's bad. And so there was a lot of frustration and anger around that. And I think we're also starting to see that in development, both business and residential, in terms of parking, right? People get really upset when there's not enough parking. But if we're trying to change behavior to have not so much of a car-centric, everything focused around cars, how do we change the psychology in a way that every time we build something that doesn't have as much parking as people think it should have, that there's not kind of an outcry over it, rather that there's a shift towards, well, maybe we need to be looking at other things aside from car-centric behavior. So I don't know if there's a good answer for that tonight. I don't know if maybe you could solve that problem for us, but just something.
Actually, we figured it all out. We have the whole plan. We're ready to go. Yeah, we've got it all.
All the answers.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, if you want to just talk about how people still own cars there, and so if you want to.
Yeah, we all went into this trip with our own notions of what we were going to learn. And we thought, it's just going to be a bike-oriented trip. And what we really learned is that they have a integrated multimodal plan, and they actually love driving. They love their cars over there, so much so that it's actually a pretty pleasant place to do it. And it really comes down to prioritization of roads. Like, this is a car road. We are going to make it awesome for driving. This is a bike road. We are going to make it great for biking. A lot of times what we do, and in the case of Capitola, our bike and our car network are kind of right over the top of each other. We're trying to fit it all in the same place. And so there's congestion, there's high speed, there's difficulties with safety. So we have to kind of disentangle it and say, like, Riverview is a good example. It's a quieter road. That's a far more conducive road for walking and biking traffic. But to your question, Mayor Brown, I think that as any of these policies that you think about, a new development with, maximum parking versus minimum parking, right, has to be kind of done in an integrated way. So you can't just do it in a vacuum and just say that new development has no parking and good luck out there. You really kind of have to look at it in a suite of policies for how do you improve the walkability and bikeability and amenities around that development so that car dependence is almost eliminated from the equation, right? And when you get like truly affordable, equitable transportation systems, people have, equal opportunity and they're not left out if they don't have a car, right? So it's kind of thinking about it in a holistic model. The new development on 41st Avenue and Soquel, that's on a transit network. There's a grocery store up across the street. It's close to a hospital. That's an example of something that's kind of densified, and you don't need as much car capacity there. And we're also geographically constrained. So if it's really just a geometry issue. If we keep building around the car, we're going to, continue to sprawl. So the Dutch have really worked on densification and having walkable, bikeable districts where you really can live a high quality life without having a car there. But it's complicated and there's not a straightforward answer. It's very contextual.
We'll keep working on it.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we go to public comment? All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Any public comment on this item? Welcome back.
I had a friend who lived in the Netherlands for a while, and what she stressed a number of times was the separation of the bicycle areas from the cars. That's absolutely critical. I also think they probably have a different economic structure that enabled them to do this that we would have more difficulty with. I think in this documentary, you're talking about, Christian, a car-centric society. Boy, is that sure. I have a documentary called Taken for a Ride that shows how in about the 1940s or earlier, the Goodyear tires, General Motors, conspired. They got a slap on the wrist for it later to buy up good transportation systems, public transportation across the U.S. and rip it out and make everyone dependent on the cars. And they could sell their cars because the trolleys used to run every few minutes. They were inexpensive, though. There's an economic structure here of why we are so car-centric. So I have some questions. That was very fascinating, interesting. We can definitely learn from other countries. And e-bikes, I think there have been discussions here of the many problems with e-bikes, including the electricity from them. And there's problems with, I don't know if they're GPS or once I took my detection meter of microwave radiation to an e-bike and it went way up because they're emitting microwave radiation, which isn't safe. And here's a quote from Barry Trower, Royal Navy microwave weapons researcher. And it was his expertise in England. To my knowledge, microwave or radio wave sickness was first reported in August 1932 with the symptoms of severe tiredness, fatigue, fitful sleep, headaches, intolerability, and a high susceptibility to infection. The paradox, of course, is how microwave radiation can be used as a weapon to cause impairment, illness, and death, and at the same time be used as a communications instrument. So my question is, this was sometimes they say smart cities, what is being used in terms of wireless microwave technology, which is a hazard and not ecological?
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paula Bradley. I live over by 41st and Capitola Road, and I ride all over the county and many other places and comment on bike usage and infrastructure. In fact, I'm the City of Capitola's representative on the Bicycle Advisory Committee to review projects the RTC is reviewing, the Regional Transportation Commission. So I'll continue to do that. But I see a lot of frustration. I'm out riding on the roads all over adjacent counties too. Just returned from 2 bicycle tours in France this summer. I think we're going through a lot of growing pains. We're seeing this increase in bicycle usage, e-bikes. And just keep in mind, as frustrating as it might be, even myself, I see people going the wrong way down the road and the sidewalk. And, we need a lot of education. And the more people that are walking and riding bikes, including the kids and the kids on the e-bikes, that means there's less vehicle trips, which is healthier for our environment. Less pollution, less need for fossil fuel, healthier lifestyle, but we need a lot of education for drivers and cyclists. And I'm sure pedestrians have frustrations too with the e-bikes on the sidewalks, which is a big problem. But I also witnessed traveling in Amsterdam and Netherlands, and it's quite amazing to get to go to these other countries where they have the infrastructure that we wish that we had here. But I also saw on the city streets of Amsterdam, pedestrians and cyclists and motor scooters sharing a 10-foot wide sidewalk with basically a stripe down the middle with peds on one side and bikes on the other. And when you first arrive there, you're just like, what is this? This is insane. But I talked to the person that was leading the tour I was on, and I asked about collisions with bikes and peds, and he said surprisingly there were very few. So, people can learn to get along. It's different. We have to get used to it, but people can share the streets, and a lot of the frustration is just sharing the space that we have. And, I think we just keep prioritizing getting there. Thank you.
Hi, welcome back.
Thank you. I just want to remind people that there are a lot of handicapped people, and a bike doesn't work for me, as you can obviously figure out. But sometimes the paths work, sometimes they don't. And I can't go as far as a bike can go. You can go 100 miles on a bike. I can barely go a mile. So eliminating cars altogether isn't really well for some handicapped people, people who can walk or blind and stuff. The rail trails are exciting to some of our blind people because they will feel safer on that. But also keep in mind that we can't totally eliminate the cars, because I would die without my car, because I couldn't go here or there. Certainly couldn't go to the store and pick up groceries for 6 people, which is what I do. So keep that in mind. But it sounds like a wonderful plan. It sounds like a lot of work to convince people that they need to do this. And if I can help with something, I'll be more than welcome to do that. I am on the, if I can say it, Elderly and Disabled Transportation Advisory Committee of the Regional Transportation Commission. You got that? So you can find me there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have just a couple of quick comments. One I think but one I haven't heard any place, which is, the state has mandated in 2030s, I don't remember the exact year, that you'll only be able to buy an electric vehicle. So it seems to me that one thing I haven't heard about any of the e-bikes is obviously, as the gentleman was just talking about, was the speed issue and so on and so forth. So is there any way to, whether we start it, the state looks at it or whatever, somehow throttle the e-bikes so they can have a maximum speed? Because then effectively, if you can't go any faster than somebody that's pedaling a bike, you get all the conveniences of an e-bike, but guess what? Now you have that speed conduciality, and you can mix the two groups pretty easily. The second thing I think that the study and the trip basically illustrates, and we kind of all know it anyway, let's get real. Capitola is like a European village. Okay, and that's our mandate. But the one place that's different, and for those of you that have been to Europe, and fortunately I've been to the Netherlands 3 or 4 times, and a couple times I've been over to Italy, is we know that they have a great mix of the architecture of first level business and then the apartments and the living above it and stuff like that. So I just think as we move forward, because that would accommodate the handicap, that would accommodate the movement around the city. Because if I only have to go, 3 or 4 blocks to basically the grocery store or the 7-Eleven to pick something up, as opposed to jumping in the car and go to Safeway or Nob Hill or whatever, then obviously I'm going to do that, and it adds to that whole conduciality. So I think I would recommend we kind of look at that as one of our overall philosophies of, along with the transportation, try and look at how does that mix with the housing and the business requirements that we're going to be putting on people coming and building into Capitola.
Thank you. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, I am really excited about all this discussion and the collaboration across the whole county. I live on the 41st corridor. We live close to the mall and Brown's Ranch, and we often bike to Brown's Ranch. And I've alluded to this before. We've had many close calls on Capitola Road, and there are no bike lanes on Claire's. I feel like there should be a prioritization in terms of connecting our communities, making sure we have safe bike lanes where residents can feel safe using them. And Claire Street is an obvious one. Another obvious road I'd like to see prioritized with the segment 10 of the rail trail that connects pretty much J Street to north of the county. We will, at that terminus, we'll need a connection from that part of Jade Street Park or 42nd or 47th to the Capitola Library. There's no good bike lanes to Rispin Park with the bridge that connects the west side of Capitola to the east side of Capitola through the bridge there. So that area as well, I feel should be a prioritization for the city. But this is all very, very exciting. I'd like to see more safe roads, safe bike lanes where people can walk and be truly a part of the community with safe community spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Yes. Yeah, take your time.
Just want to see, there's maybe, I'm Richard back again. Because of the presentation, I'd like to talk to you a little different area than Capitola. But in Mexico, I think there's a connection between what could be where you create jobs for our young people, because I get off the bus and boy, now that's a long walk when you get to the 88. I think we could make a connection between ecology action and a model here in Capitola, because many people would love to give a kid a job. And I remember the things they had in Mexico, the kids peddled. Well, think about possibilities. So don't need 3 minutes. I just want to say, I wish my city of Santa Cruz would have what I experienced here on this agenda item. And I wasn't here for this one, but if we're going to focus on possibilities, then please invite the probation department to get this community involved, because at the county where we had all that publicity on the cigarettes and all the rest, you should have seen the lines. I've got it on my camera. They want the community when they're making these big decisions of what they're doing with the kids. So we all do what we do, and I didn't mean I don't need the mic, but it's nice to be with some friends. And so I happen to know that good ideas take the people that have the management. We lost maybe Watsonville's to Salinas, but look what you got still. So appreciate what we might do. Think about jobs and what we can do for the young people. With us elders, I'd sure hire a kid rather than walking 3 blocks from a bus stop, at least on SoCal. They do come to buses every 15 minutes. I hope that spoke to you and maybe be a next step.
Thank you. Any further comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will bring it back to council. There is no action on this item. It is just a presentation. We are going on to 2 hours, so we will take a quick 3-4 minute break for anyone who needs to stretch their legs, get some air, check the score of the game, and we will return momentarily. All right, everyone, if we could take our seats, we're going to go ahead and resume the meeting. And we're back. We are on item 8B, and this item is an RFQ for the 41st Avenue Corridor Plan. And I'll turn it over to Katie.
Thank you, Mayor Brown and Council. Tonight before you is an RFQ, a request for qualifications for a future 41st Avenue Corridor Plan. Next slide, please. Our recommended action tonight is that the City Council authorize staff to publish a RFQ for a future corridor plan. Next slide. Some background here. Over the years, Capitola has done multiple economic development studies. During our most recent budget hearing, $75,000 was put to the side towards economic development on our 41st Avenue corridor. In deciding what to utilize those funds for, we went back, looked at some of the economic development studies that have already been done for the 41st Avenue corridor. There was one done in 2009. And then again, a newer study in 2011 during the general plan update. And both had repeated elements for economic growth and redevelopment, really looking at our land use, our urban design within that area, better definition of place, traffic, circulation, creating a place that people really want to be and experience. Next slide, please. Many of the items have been completed from those studies that were related that you can implement within your zoning code and your regulations. So following the 2009 and 2011 studies, our regional commercial along 41st Avenue was modified to allow mixed use, both vertical and horizontal mixed use. So commercial on the first floor with housing above, or as long as it's on the same lot, a mix of commercial and residential within the same property, but not, horizontal is when it doesn't have to be first story commercial, but they can be side by side. We reduced parking requirements along within our regional commercial areas. We've decreased the requirements for when a conditional use permit is needed for new businesses to come in for low impact commercial. We've also created an incentivized section of our code in which a developer can get increased height or floor area ratio, which is something that's on our mall site and around the Capitola Road and 41st Avenue intersection. We've updated our sign code to make it easier to get administrative permits for new businesses. We've raised the threshold for when a conditional use permit is required by the Planning Commission to really incentivize businesses coming into the district. And we've also changed our criteria to be more objective and quantifiable. And those are changes that we have made. Next slide, please. In going through these studies, some of the changes that we have not made, and primarily due to like resources, funding, because these are more expensive obligations by the city, but working towards a unified design theme and branding for the 41st Avenue corridor, improving our infrastructure to attract retailers, so our infrastructure being the streets, creating complete streets to connect the corridor to the neighboring neighborhoods, which was a focus of some of the prior discussion, enhancing those pedestrian and bicycle access points, the focus on the Metro Transit Center, that's something that's a focus within our general plan. And then looking at our urban amenities to bring in more mixed use and residential projects and our facilities, and then just focusing more on some of the short-term projects that are easier to implement, such as wayfinding, landscaping, and public spaces, and just placemaking in terms of a vibrant mixed use corridor in the future. So next slide. More recently, we've adopted our housing element in August, and the 41st Avenue and the Capitola Mall is one of the major development projected areas for future housing in Capitola. So we have a need for higher density residential and really focusing in on that corridor and transforming it into a place that not only people shop, but in a place that they want to be and raise their families and be able to get around safely as well as having a more pleasant experience as a pedestrian or on a bicycle. Next slide, please. So for this, what we're proposing to moving forward is to start a new planning effort towards a corridor plan for the 41st Avenue and to put out a request for qualifications to guide future reinvestment into the 41st Avenue. Within a request for qualifications, you place your goals and purposes out there to contractors in which they can produce a plan to move forward and how we could implement this strategy. So typically within an RFP, the city creates a very defined scope in which when consultants respond to the scope, they give all the details of exactly how it fits within the city's scope. This is a different approach in which you're reaching out to planning professionals and asking them what is the best approach for creating a corridor plan within our 41st Avenue corridor. Next slide. So in identifying what our goals would be, it would be to create a new plan in which the streets are multimodal streets for pedestrians, bicycles, cars, public transit, looking at opportunities for new green spaces along 41st Avenue. The city owns the right-of-way, but really looking at opportunities of whether or not there's the ability to create new green spaces. Also looking at placemaking and branding through public art, lighting, landscaping, signs, street furniture, and looking at safety enhancements as we discussed it during the last presentation. And then also in putting this all together, thinking about the future planning along 41st Avenue and how it would be incorporated. Next slide. So I'm going to walk through an example of a corridor plan that really utilizes planning principles as well as transportation principles. So this is Re-Envision West Arden Arcade, and it was an effort in the Sacramento area for creating a new corridor study. So this is an example of one of their streets, and it kind of has similar characteristics to our 41st Avenue and Mall site. Next slide, please. Sorry, when they did their public outreach, there were 3 main goals that came out of that, and really trying to create vibrant, family-friendly neighborhoods with a strong identity, creating accessibility and connections for people for walking, rolling, biking, and within public transit, and then also thriving local businesses. So keeping your businesses that you have thriving as well as attracting new businesses to the area. Next slide, please. This is also an example from that study. So on the left, you're seeing what their typical street looked like prior to the study, and then the suggestion of really separating the cars from the bicycles, bringing in more landscaping and trees to create a better experience and a more green experience for the end user. Next slide, please. And also in there is design principles. So looking at pedestrian scale lighting, furniture along the street, public furniture such as benches, shade structures, and then also creating community spaces within larger blocks. So how you break down a block. Back in 2019, when we had a mall redevelopment project and they created their new Main Street going through the mall and they had park areas, it really changed the whole dynamic of what we think of as the Capitola Mall today and what it could be in the future. So just identifying where how we could have these spaces within the future. Next slide. And then this image is a block by block image showing how you can really improve these areas. And it's not only through bike lanes and expanding sidewalks, but really looking at the natural landscape and bringing in more trees, making it a cooler environment, really thinking about your areas that you have too much parking and creating more public spaces where people can gather. So this is just one example that could be implemented within a future corridor plan. Next slide. So the timeline, if authorized tonight, we would publish the RFQ in October and then ask for submissions in February of 2025. So giving people time to really put together the scope and how they would approach this project. And next slide, please. And then the funding for this, originally there was 75,000 that was allocated through our through the general plan update fund, and then we also received extra money through AMBAG. Originally, they had cut back our REAP 2.0 grant by 50%, and then it ended up the cut was only about 10%, so we have about $35,000 there to add to this as well. So the total is 110,000. I think there was an error in the staff report, so correcting that. So our recommendation tonight, go to the next slide, is to authorize staff to publish the RFQ for a 41st Avenue corridor plan. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Questions?
It's super exciting to see this coming along. One of the things I had concern about, and I've heard some rumors about it, the disconnect, but maybe between the city and some of the owners of the mall and the mall property. Hopefully, we're working hand in hand with them as we're moving forward on this. We have a good dialogue with them so that we don't have one idea and then they have another idea, so that we can streamline it all. Hopefully, that's something staff's been working on.
Yes, so we would initially reach out to a lot of the different property owners along 41st Avenue corridor, but as well as Marlon Geyer at the mall to discuss the future of growth on 41st Avenue and what their desires are as business owners and property owners.
Does the REAP grant expire?
It does. We would have to complete the work that's in conjunction with the REAP grant by September of next year. So the initial billing could come out of the REAP grant to make sure we spend that money first.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie, for all the great work you're doing on this. It's really exciting. I had a question based on correspondence we received from City Council candidate Melinda Orbach proposing a specific plan. Could you talk a little bit about the difference between a specific plan and the recommended action of the RFQ?
Yes. So a specific plan is what we're looking at tonight is a corridor plan, and it really looks at the area within our right-of-way and those connections to the right-of-way. And along the 41st Avenue corridor, we really don't own much land other than the within our street area. A specific plan is more of a land use development tool that you define a specific area and then you do a planning study within that area. So really looking at existing conditions, and then the specific plan, you work with the public to help define like what the future of that area should be and what the vision is for the community in that area. And then really redefining your zoning in that area to effectuate the specificity of a plan for the future. So you could have like different height limits along different streets. It's really it's almost like an additional zoning layer with a specific plan, because and another difference is a specific plan where is typically more expensive, and it's also added cost with an EIR that accompanies it for the CEQA analysis. So where this study is about 100,000, a specific plan, you'd be looking at close to $1 million.
And if we were to do a specific plan in the future, would that be reproducing efforts and expenses? If we did this first and a specific plan after, would the specific plan encompass a lot of the same work that we're doing in this project we're talking about today?
So the specific plan, as Community Director Hurley mentioned, really focuses on the private property and developing sort of what the plan is for the private property. You do look at the infrastructure around it. This is really kind of coming up with a blueprint for the streets. Yeah, for our right-of-way. I think you saw in the presentation how there's been a lot of different steps we've taken kind of on the regulatory side, like trying to change the zoning to help make it easier for people to use properties, to incentivize people to come in. There's sort of another way at kind of economic development. A good example of that we're all familiar with is Lower 41st in the county, where they went in and they really rebuilt the infrastructure And then over the next decade, you saw kind of the redevelopment infill and come back in. So the goal is to identify kind of in the three major blocks, if you will, from Claire's to the freeway, and then in front of the mall, and then maybe Cap Road south to the city limits. Kind of what does our idealized street look like? You know, taking some of the lessons learned from the Netherlands trip, you know, how do you divvy up the space to make sure that it moves people effectively? Because we're going to have traffic, we're going to have a lot of cars, but it also moves other types of users through that space as well, and maybe accomplishes some of those other goals. Helps with branding, helps with placemaking. So it's kind of, they're sort of separate, and they can definitely work in conjunction, but I wouldn't say it's a repetition by any means.
The other item I'd add is it's really with this blueprint, it creates a tool that we can go after more grant money and try to effectuate the change within the street, and also planning grants for future, just looking at the placemaking standards. So it's really like that first step so that we can then apply for more grant funds in the future and see that incremental change of 41st Avenue over time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Kitty, for the presentation. My question is in regards to whether we have all of the information and data and studies collection from that would help the potential consultant really with this blueprint. And so I'm speaking to, you know, we have a strategic plan out there. We're collecting information from the community and what they'd like to see on the corridor. We have the annexation study taking place. And so I'm just concerned, and I think Councilmember Morgan brings up a good point about the grant funding. My question to you is, does this feel like the consultant would have all the information now, or would it make sense to push this out a little bit longer until all of the information is collected? Because perhaps this consultant needs to look at all of 41st Avenue, you know, not just those 3 blocks. It could potentially be more. So I'm just wondering if there's a timeline issue and that this could wait until all the information's there for the consultant.
I think you make a really good point in that we are right now going through a strategic planning process, which the public will be identifying a vision for the future of the whole city. Within the actual corridor plan, it's really focused on this corridor. So I think you could run them simultaneously, but I could see a benefit from making sure to get all the data points and understanding the overarching goals within the strategic plan. So I do think a lot of valuable information will be coming out of that. But I do think you could, this is going to be really engaging with the property owners along 41st Avenue and the neighborhoods around it. So again, it would be a lot of public outreach, but
is it in the RFQ to look at the entire 41st? That was really my pointed question about we're looking at potentially having all of that, or, you know, absolving that into the community. And so I'm just curious whether that's built into the RFQ.
You're referring to the annexation study, right?
Yeah.
oh, it would only be to our current city boundary.
And so right now we have the potential, you know, we're looking at that. And so my question is more specific to that, whether doing this with only 3 blocks and for $110,000 now, and then perhaps we need to be looking at the entire corridor, the entire 41st Avenue block, and then we need to go back and start over. Do you see what I mean? So I'm just wondering if it's a little cart before a horse, or...
Yeah, we do have limited funds for this study, and 110,000 would be definitely a corridor study kind of on the light side, and very focused because the limited funds that are there in order to do the study. So I don't think with 110,000 we could go further south than the current city boundary.
That brings up a question for me. For the RFQ process submission deadline of February 2025, what exactly is going to happen in February 2025? Is that the beginning of the process or the end of the process?
It's the very beginning. So then we'd be bringing it back to you, know, with the holidays coming up, and then just building in enough time for qualified professionals to submit a whenever we have a deadline in January, it's really difficult to get submittals because people take so much time off in December and around the holidays. So that's why the February date.
And then can somebody remind me what the timeline for the strategic plan is and how?
Our goal is to bring the project to conclusion this winter. That's the plan.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So
Yes.
they would really be stacked in an advantageous way already.
Yeah,
right?
this project, I think the work around this project would be kicking off probably around the time the strategic plan is being completed.
And then regarding the possible annexation, do you have any idea how long that process might take? Because in my mind, that's a very big if, and seems like it would take years probably.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to postpone any progress on the 41st Avenue corridor based on this very small % chance occurrence that will take many years to accomplish.
Yeah, I couldn't really comment on a timeline for the annexation study. We are embarking on it, but it's very much conceptual. This is a first step in that regard to see if there's any financial interest. We're not. Yeah, we're not. Just to be clear, we're not moving forward with any annexations at this time.
So I guess that I would think that adjusting any of our plannings for the city of Capitola based on any future annexation plans would be putting the cart before the horse rather than the latter.
Okay. My questions were already asked, so we will go to public comments. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, I submitted the comments already, but I do want to share with folks who didn't get to read it. So I have some concerns regarding the proposed concept because the city has already funded 2 visioning documents in 2009 and 2011, and those led to minimal changes in the zoning and really no significant development. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Olive Garden is the one development that happened within the last, 8 years. Rather than spending another $110,000 on another, visioning document, I think the city would be better served by building a larger budget over the next couple of years and applying for grant funding for a specific plan. I know, City of Santa Cruz has a downtown specific plan. Watsonville also has a downtown specific plan. And I think the Watsonville downtown specific plan costs about $800,000, but they were able to get $500,000 in grants. So the city paid about $300,000. If we're spending $100,000 this time, if we save up $100,000 for the next few years, with the more information from the strategic plan, as well as perhaps the LAFCO study about annexation, we can expand the project wider and really truly have a specific plan, which can be adopted by ordinance and used as a regulatory document. And it has a potential to truly transform the area. The housing element already laid much of the groundwork for a specific plan that we can build on. And a specific plan for the corridor would allow us to focus on more than just the Capitola Mall site, including Clare Street and Capitola Road and any of the other streets that we're looking at expanding and changing. Drafting a specific plan would involve a large amount of community input and resulting in a reflecting what the residents want to see. I think if we're really serious about revitalizing the 41st Avenue corridor, that this level of investment, we need to be able to make this level of investment. If not, we'll end up spending $110,000 and have another pretty visioning plan on the shelf. Because like I said, 2 other visioning plans and we don't have much to show for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome back.
know my wife hates me, it's that she brought me this evening. Two comments for you. One is, if you debate in high school or college, you know that you have to come up with a plan for the affirmative aspect, but the big key is you learn in winning debates that you have to have enforcement. So the biggest problem I have with this plan is the fact that there's no aspect in terms of looking at the enforcement for whatever the plan is going to be. And I think it's a disservice to our police department that that as part of the qualification for the plan, that you're not putting in the aspects. You've got the comments on the safety, but you don't have the aspects of relegating the safety and how the police department will be able to enforce whatever that plan is. Okay. Secondly, several of the council members has already brought it up, and I totally agree with the comments. I think the cart's way before the horse. Until we know what we're doing with 41st, I think it's a waste of money.
Thank you. If you could just come up to the mic so that we can, so that those can.
What does the annexation refer to? I've never heard of, haven't heard of it. I'm guessing everyone else knows, but I'm not sure what that is.
Thank you. When we return from public comment, we'll ask for a brief summary of that. Hi, welcome back.
I'm concerned about I'm questioning the hiring of companies from other locations, distant locations, to be paid a lot of money for preliminary studies, like the one that's coming up. El Segundo is right next to the Los Angeles International Airport. I'm just concerned that we're not getting enough local input into the situation before we hire out to somebody who's never been here before. This reminds me of all of the traffic studies they have done over the years for Capitola Village. We had studied traffic and parking to death here. And it's still the same problem. Anyway, I would like you to think more locally than you do outside the area when you decide that you're going to spend all this money on studies, because it's going to affect us. It's not going to affect the people that are advising you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay. Oh, yes.
Hi again. I don't live in Capitola, but I reside in Live Oak, and I do a lot of my shopping over in Capitola. I walk and I bike and I drive through the area. And I guess at this point, it's preliminary, but I just want to express support for the vision and the concept of taking a look at 41st Avenue and really trying to wrestle with a lot of these concepts that have been tried other places but haven't been tried here. And so I think like that thinking and that exercise feels like a valuable one. And there is some grant funding that expires, and as an organization that has that same situation, you don't use it, you lose it. So if you can't use it on anything else, I would just voice my support for taking the step to get it a little more crystallized. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further comments? Seeing none, we will bring it back to council. And then before we move forward, if we could just get, I guess we could just state that the council at was it our last meeting, approved an annexation study. Can you give like a brief summary of what an annexation study is for those who weren't, I could do it, but I don't think I do it as well as you could.
Of course. So really quickly, the city has its city limits, which are the city boundaries, and then we have what's called our sphere of influence. And the sphere of influence is a larger area, and it's often an area that the city intends to maybe someday make part of the city. The city's sphere of influence hasn't changed since the 1980s, and we haven't annexed any property into the city and that sphere of influence. So LAFCO, in which Vice Mayor Brooks sits, in their wisdom, when they looked at the city and what we were doing, said, Capitola, this is in there every 5 years, they do an evaluation of kind of how the city is doing. They said, Capitola, you've had this larger sphere for a long time, haven't annexed it. Why don't you need to do a study to see whether or not any of these make sense to move into the city. So that's what we're doing. We're taking a look at sort of the areas kind of to the west of Capitola Mall, to the west of the city limits today, and seeing if any of those areas would make sense to be part of Capitola in the future. But it's kind of just that first step.
Thank you. Because I do think, since we're talking about that, to have the public understand why that matters in this discussion. Okay, I will save the rest of my questions till after my colleagues have spoken.
Katie, this question's for you. In regards to the grant funding, can it be used for anything else?
It can. It's grant funding to help us implement our housing element. So we're utilizing it for the zoning code updates right now that I'll be bringing to you at the next meeting. But yes, it has to be utilized for implementation of the housing element.
Could that include some of the things, if council were to make that kind of safer streets vision a goal after our strategic plan, and we come back in the new year and we make this a goal of ours, could that funding be used for something like that, since we have till February 2025 to use it or to begin using it?
We have to finish using it by September of next year.
Okay.
So
we have some time.
We have some time.
Great.
About
Thank you.
a little less than a year.
Okay, we have time to use the money. Perfect. Thank you.
Either one. Yeah, I guess we're on comments now, but if you have questions, you can also ask those. Yeah.
Comments that I have are that I think this is something we need to move forward on. We've been not doing anything for a long time. Annexation, if LAFCO says that's something for us to do and it's good, it's still going to take several years to get that done. So I think that we just need to keep moving forward on the project. Anything we can do to help 41st Avenue corridor move forward is something I'd like to see done. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess I obviously want us to make improvements on 41st Avenue. I think it's very important. But I'm wondering, with the time frame of the strategic planning and gathering that information, why we can't wait till we have more of that before getting too far ahead of ourselves, or I don't know. I don't know if this is happening in like a weird timeline of events, but maybe that's just the way I'm looking at it. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, just comments. I think my interpretation of when I asked that question was that we would have the results of the strategic plan by the time we start this, so that we wouldn't be doing those two things at the same time and could leverage the results of the strategic plan for this corridor plan or corridor study. And I would just completely agree with Councilmember Clark that we've spent many years not doing anything, not doing enough for this corridor, for multimodal streets, for economic development. And given that this takes 4 months to even begin the process, and we just had this very inspiring presentation from the groups who went to the Netherlands, I think we just need to get started on this. So I would highly recommend moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree that we need to evaluate the 41st Avenue corridor. The issue I have is that we have a scope of work that is asking for consultants to provide innovative and aligned with our goals and our city budget. We're asking folks to come in and to analyze the 41st Avenue corridor with those things in place. And my concern is that we don't have those things in place for the consultants to do the job that they need to do, because we haven't decided on those things. We have not heard from our community on the strategic plan. We haven't heard from council on our new goals for the new year. It sounds like the money we can punt we can utilize in a different way, or we have time to utilize it. So for me, it's not about not doing the work, because it is very important, but we still don't know the timeline on Merlone Geyer and what they want to do and how that's all going to tee up to this. So for our consultants to come in, it might just be, in fact, something that they won't have enough information to provide or to be given in order to provide us what we need, which is, we want a plan, and we want to see what's going to be great about the corridor. So my recommendation, my hope is that we could bring this back to council once we have all of that information to provide to the consultants in order to do the work, because they need all of those tools. They need all of that from us. They need those goals identified in order to really create a cohesive plan. So those are my comments, and I'm open to hear more feedback from my counterparts.
So I have a couple. I apologize if this has already been stated and I missed it. I'm kind of trying to put a puzzle to picture together here. So we expect the strategic plan to be done by February. Is that where's the February is coming from? Or was it the annexation study we expect to be done by February?
Strategic plan, probably adoption February, March.
Okay. And then what about the annexation study? Do we know when we expect that to be done?
We just had our first project kickoff meeting, and I'm seeing 6 months for the whole project. So that should be wrapping up, I think, April, May.
Okay, so May at the latest, I guess. Let's assume May at the latest, and we need to spend this money by September. The RFQ itself, just asking for qualifications, that doesn't cost anything, right?
That's correct.
So just putting out the RFQ doesn't cost any money. What costs money is once we choose someone based on the RFQ to actually start a corridor plan, that's when the money part comes in. So technically, we could tonight authorize staff to issue a request for qualifications, start gathering all the qualifications, because usually that's at least 30 days, right? If not longer. Get all the qualifications, that would come back, get all those in November, hold it until, December or February or whatever the case may be, and then move forward with the money part of it, with all the planning and stuff, because by then we will have at least had the strategic plan done, and we could then roll the RFQ corridor plan people into the annexation study people and make it one big. I'm Italian, I speak with my hands, I can move that. Oh, now I still need it. Yeah, sorry. Do you get where I'm going with this?
I do.
Okay.
That is essentially what we're proposing, is that we would ask for actually advertise for qualifications through the holidays into February. We work with a consultant to try to identify a top team, work on a proposal, and so on. Probably in March would be when the council would see conceivably a scope of work to do begin to work. Council would have to authorize it, obviously, for us to actually start moving forward.
Okay.
That's kind of the rough timeline. Frankly, that was driven by the holidays, and it was also driven by the current workload in Public Works, because this is going to be both a real partnership between our planning department and Public Works department. And they felt like they needed to get through some really important stuff this winter and then could pick this up kind of next spring. So that was kind of the timeline we were envisioning.
Okay, so even if we issue the RFQ tonight, we would not expect them, whoever submits qualifications, the council subsequently says, these are the people that we want because we like their qualifications. We would not expect them to actually start a 41st Avenue corridor plan until around March.
Correct.
And by then, we're expecting our strategic plan to be done, and we're only a couple months away from the annexation study to be done, so we could potentially put them in contact with the people doing the annexation study so that could be involved somehow in this corridor plan as like a alternatives analysis or something.
It's certainly feasible. I think the annexation plan is going to look kind of at the sphere and say, here's maybe if we were to break the whole sphere up into kind of different zones, maybe zones that we might focus on more. And if at the end of the day, the lower 41st Avenue corridor kind of was one of the zones, I think then we could take a look at what would it take to expand the scope if we wanted to include that portion. We also might want to do it as a subsequent phase because, again, the annexation plan could take a while if we were to end up actually really. Yeah, I feel like we're pretty far ahead of ourselves. For me, at least, I'm not quite comfortable talking about
Right.
we're really just feasibility, sort of assessing the
Of course.
feasibility of an annexation.
Well, and to your point, what you just said, if this were to start in March and the annexation study would be expected to be done in May, then would we expect this corridor plan to be done by May, or would they still be working on it? Which at that point they would be able to use the annexation study within there.
I expect the corridor study to take somewhere between 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. So there would be, even if we issued a request for proposal tonight, there is an opportunity for all three of these studies, the strategic plan, the annexation study, and the corridor plan, to all kind of end up in a Venn diagram where in the middle, they're all connected.
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
If I can add, so I'm reviewing the requests for qualifications. And so what Mayor Brown just said would be the perfect scenario in a perfect world if it all teed up right. And so the request for qualifications to, again, the consultants, it just needs to be really clear. And as all of these additional things come into play, it's going to cost us more money at the end of the day. And to our speaker's point of this is going to cost more money to do such a complete review of the corridor, I think council just needs to be prepared that more than likely this will come back and it will cost us more money to ensure that all of those things in the Venn diagram for the consultant to review is, it's going to take more time than I think the 4 months. And again, in what the scope is here for the RFQ. So I just want to highlight that this little piece is just a piece of the puzzle in reviewing and making this plan, because there's so many other things. It's not just going to cost us this $100,000, and it is only going to just be a high arching plan that's conceptualized, and it's not real stuff that's going to get done on the corridor. So I just want to share that with council, and that's really where my concerns are coming from, that this is a plan and it's not going to happen. There's a lot more to it too, just like we've been waiting for the mall.
Well, I agree with that. I just think that we're not really putting our necks out there financially right at this time, right? It's going to come back to us regardless. So I totally understand, and I want that perfect storm of that Venn diagram, and I don't even know if that's possible. But if we can get to that point, that would be great. The annexation, it sounds like we're talking more about like the west side of 41st. So is that still considered the 41st corridor? Like, how is that really going to affect open spaces of 41st Avenue?
I mean, since I sit on LAFCO, I can just, or I used to, I no longer, thank you for mentioning that. But it could, so in the annexation, which is totally separate, and so we have to be careful about how much we talk about it, because as it's still being reviewed, but there could be an additional, the rest of 41st that is not in the city limits could become within our city limits. Who knows how long that's gonna take, or how, so, that's why I brought it up with this potential corridor plan, because we're only gonna be reviewing 3 blocks of 41st, not all of it, because it's not within our city limits. And also why I brought up my concern about this is because we don't have the full plan for the mall. And so again, we're going to have these consultants coming here and saying, what do you want to do, without, again, really concrete information. So I'm, again, another study on the shelf would just be a real bummer. But what I'm hearing is that we're not spending $100,000 today, and that we're just putting this out. I guess my request would be that we really be clear on the request for qualifications to the consultants about all of these things are coming up, and all of these things need to be included in the review of this plan. And that's what I'd like to see, that the consultants are very clear on that.
And I think along those lines, and I don't know if I speak for everybody, but after some of the comments, I know it's been very hard with a lot of these larger projects that we've done, but to really look at people that are a little bit closer to where we live or are from an environment that's similar to the 41st Avenue. Maybe whoever was involved with the one that used the West Arden Arcade. I just want to agree with the speaker that we do I think that's where we'll probably get the best outcome and like the best understanding of what our city needs.
Yeah, I'd like to add that we're talking about a lot of unknowns. I think that we need to just focus on what we do know, and we need to know that we need to move forward. So I think if we're not paying for it now and we can make the final decision later, let's do it. Let's move forward.
Is that a motion, or does someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we follow staff's recommendations.
Second.
For the RFQ.
I just want to make sure that staff has the information on the adjustment to the statement of qualifications needed for the consultants. We can have some of those more clear points that were made about ensuring that information from the ongoing studies from the strategic plan are included in the plan that's created. I just want to make sure that the consultant knows that.
So we're not asking for proposals right now. We're just asking for qualifications.
Right. And as I read the qualifications, it's not very clear about, it's like really, really high level. And I just want to be clear to when this goes out for as an RFQ, that the folks who apply for it are very clear that there's more information coming to them. And it's not clear here to me. It's really, really high level.
Yeah, I think we should clarify that with the RFQ process, they'll be telling us how they're qualified to do this project, but they will also provide their recommended approach to the project and what they can accomplish within our budget as well. So, I can add that information to the RFQ, and then that will be part of the feedback that we get. And then I'll be bringing that to you in February or March. Those different proposals and what can be accomplished. And at that time, you can make a decision to move forward.
So my motion will stand.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on now to our item 8C, Capitola Mall redevelopment land use study. Is that still you, Katie?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Good to see you again.
thank you. And we have our consultants, Cosmont Companies, Ken Hira on, I think it will be doing the presentation. And Ken, if you could put on your camera, we can do a quick sound check.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, so Ken here is the president with Cosmont Companies, and Tom Jervoski is a senior advisor with Cosmont Companies, and they're here tonight to give a presentation on the Capitola Mall redevelopment land use study. And this was launched over a year ago, and then we put it on pause as we were going through our housing element update due to getting feedback during our housing element of feedback from Merlone Geyer at the mall asking for specific height increases and floor area increases, and let's do some analysis on what's feasible at the mall in terms of economic development. And that's why this study, which was expected to only take about 3 months, is now coming to you a year later because we really needed to work through our housing element adoption, which happened in August. And from that, I'll let you take it from here, Ken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor and members of the council, my name is Ken Hira, president of Cosmont Companies. My colleague, Tom Jarofsky, is also on. He's a senior advisor. And we've been working on advisory services at some capacity with the city of Capitola for probably the last 5 years, including, evaluation of the mall and its redevelopment opportunities. In the middle of that, there was sort of the pandemic and housing element and all kinds of impacts to land use. So here we are today with a high level evaluation of some potential incentives. If you could go to the next slide, please. And the report that you all have in your packets is a little more robust than what is here. So I'm going to try to present high level bullet points, if you will, to what we've researched for you all. And in general, just as a broad statement, regional malls are, all regional malls for that matter, are in need of reimagination. They're very good candidates for mixed or blended use. And the real goal for, I think, communities and for the owners of those malls is to try to create a balancing act between obsolete retail, which would include department stores and other large scale, retail formats, but a balancing act between what retail makes sense that's left and other land uses. Residential is a very compatible land use, frankly, with retail, and other commercial uses can be compatible as well with retail, but it's a balancing act. And so some of the key market conditions and potential incentives for commercial development include land use approvals. The land use approvals or zoning ends up being a very powerful tool for cities. And that balancing act can come through zoning measures. Another tool, if you will, is conditional use permits or development agreements for large scale projects. Development agreements are negotiated between cities and developers, and they both get something out of a development agreement, both parties, cities and the developer. But the terms can really help dictate, certain important land uses that are part of that balancing act, where residential today is driving a lot of high residual land value, high value out of property. So that's the profit proposition for the developers, but the fiscal impact to cities varies based on those land uses, whether it's all residential or residential along with some other tax generating or community driven uses like hotels, restaurants, entertainment uses. The profits for developers from new commercial is in fact lower than residential. As I said, residential is one of the highest land values. And so therefore the city may need to consider incentives to reduce the risk. And this is all toward the notion of how do we incentivize development. Next slide, please. Vertical mixed use, pretty obviously, is this little caption on the left and the bottom, where you've got commercial on the bottom of residential above it. And a more horizontal mix or blend of uses would be where those uses are adjacent to each other. And I think in Capitola's code, there's not a real requirement for vertical mixed use. In fact, the notion of horizontal use at the mall site, I think, is embraced. And vertical mixed use is just, it needs to be really market driven. And a lot of the retail on the bottom floor of residential has not really worked very well. They need to be in very urbanized environments. And those projects tend to be pretty costly. Next slide. Hotels, they're really ideal commercial uses to incorporate into this blend of land uses. I just read an article today by ICSC, which is the organization that is kind of the retail industry group organization. And I just read an article about how compatible hotel and retail uses are. So you see a lot of that just because of how the consumer perceives the experience and the nature of the leisure and experiential uses that hotels and retail frankly offer. So they're very compatible in our estimation. The profit, back to the profit for the master developer, again, is not as high as compared to residential. And the reason I keep bringing that up is because at the end of the day, if we're talking about the mall, there are multiple landowners, but there is one that has the majority of land use. And if there's not a profit proposition for the developers, they won't move forward. And I think, unfortunately, we've seen that based on, again, a variety of things, buying property, a pandemic, the financial markets, which have increased in terms of interest rates and costs that made a lot of things infeasible. So the public sector just needs to be aware, in a sense, what the private sector is facing when it comes to development feasibility. At the same time, the public sector shouldn't be making decisions that aren't fiscally sound and aren't community driven. So we do look at the profit for the private sector, and that's why we're coming to some of these conclusions, if you will, and recommendations that incentives may be needed and considered as part of driving commercial and balanced and blended land uses with residential. Next slide. So we've put together a list of potential incentive programs. These programs really are, I think the staff report states it pretty well. It's examples that illustrate how flexible zoning, public-private collaboration, and the strategic use of incentives can lead to successful redevelopment outcomes. I think that's well put. So we've got a list of those. This is a menu. This is a menu of options that may be used, in conjunction with each other. They may not be used because at the end of the day, it's your decision on what is used. But when we talk about fee waivers, and I'll explain these a little bit in the following slides, but fee waivers, sort of density bonus concepts, including height limits that are raised, which we've just, Katie referred to that as far as your housing element, greater FAR, local tax sharing agreements where there's a financial incentive that helps increase tax revenues and the sharing of it, special districts, tax increment financing districts. I know that we're frankly working with the city of Santa Cruz on those types of districts, EIFDs, as well as a climate resilience district or potential tools. CFDs are additional taxes, which are community facilities districts. So there's different districts can be utilized that can be established to help pay for infrastructure. Infrastructure cost support. This would include bonds and grants, other ways for cities and the public sector to frankly invest in public improvements through different types of bonds or lease revenue bonds or otherwise, and or grants. The grant dollars are available. In fact, when special districts are formed, DIFDs, they tend to get better scoring to get access to grant monies, which are earlier monies in a process. Another potential incentive is public parking. It's the funding at a lower cost of capital for public parking. Parking is a very expensive concept. If parking or a parking structure is needed, and that can be funded or financed at a lower cost of capital at a city credit rating, and it's public, then it can bring a lower cost of capital to an expensive cost of capital private project. Right now, the private sector is facing very high interest rates. Tom and I are working on several projects across the state of California, but we're working on one where the public parking structure, or a parking structure, I should say, for a project to achieve certain density just cannot be built by the private sector. So in that case, the city might be willing to build public parking. So again, another incentive. Next slide, please. The approach here is that we've got a menu of options to help assist with mall redevelopment, pros and cons. The challenges to the mall redevelopment is that it's really driven by market conditions and economic forces, and the planning and entitlement challenges or limitations. Next slide. The city could establish some objective development standards for commercial development to help that balancing act and the blend with residential at the mall site. An example of that is 25% of gross area on the site could be retail or restaurant or hotel. 1,000 new units, for example, would equate to 300,000 square feet of commercial to be retained or added. So there's formulas that can be achieved, or that can be pursued, or that can be considered. Again, public sector, in your case, the city is trying to help incentivize and yet get something in return. You have to have a positive fiscal return on a project if you're going to move forward with it. So there's two sides to that equation. The use of a development agreement is, we think, a good idea because it gives both parties, mall owner and city certain benefits. And those benefits, tend to outweigh any drawbacks to negotiating a complicated development agreement. But a development agreement is a common way to achieve the longevity of a project where both parties benefit. And then enhancements and incentives, to be clear, we can never create a direct correlation or a guarantee that the mall is going to get redeveloped in a timely fashion. Frankly, as we've worked on this for a few years, and costs have probably gone up by 40% in the last few years, and interest rates have gone up by 500% or 500 basis points. It's really caused a lot of challenges with the feasibility of development. So what we're finding in other cities is you're not alone. And some of these ideas, incentives, the challenges to development feasibility, they're pretty commonplace today. Next slide. So here's just a caption of the mall. You can see the ownership by MGP, which is generally in the blue. But to be clear, the properties that are in the red, Target, Macy's, Ross, Olive Garden, and another couple pads, are not owned by the mall owner, by the majority owner, by MGP. So there will need to be some collaboration. There's agreements that tie these malls together. There are CC&Rs, covenants and restrictions. And those agreements tend to also have they clause for the navigation of redevelopment. There's striped areas, which are hard to see. Frankly, those are further control areas. I'm working on another mall deal, several mall deals. I'm working on another mall deal, and it's finding the needle in the haystack where redevelopment can actually take place outside of restricted areas. So that's the art and science behind redeveloping a mall. Next slide, please. So we get into detail about those various tools. I don't want to read every single word on every slide here. I just want to get through the high level for these examples. But in the case of fee waivers, we've seen it where development impact fees can be reduced. There can also be credits given to developers for DIF based on previous payment for commercial square footage. Another option would be DIF, development impact fees, could be reduced or relaxed after a certain amount of commercial development is brought to fruition. So there's hurdles and thresholds. Sacramento County has an established DIF fee program. If DIF fees aren't paid to the city on the front end of a project necessarily, and there's a trade-off for that, it's early revenues perhaps not paid to the cities, but the idea is to incentivize the tax base for the earlier years in the next cycle. So it's a trade-off. Next slide, please. This is an idea of some bonus residential floor areas for a trade-off for different land uses. The idea of having greater FAR, now we've already gotten to probably 75 based on the housing element, which still needs to go through the zoning changes, et cetera, and the 2.0 FAR, which still needs to go through the zoning changes. But this is just the notion that additional FAR, additional height limits, if you will, can potentially be a trade-off for certain commercial uses. Cities across the state are using these types of density bonus programs, and there's a trade-off for it. The increasing commercial land value for a residential unit to the developer could be $25,000 to $50,000 of sort of profit based on land value in additional units. And if Capitola could achieve, or the developer could bring to fruition, a hotel or a revenue stream that's equal to a hotel, a TOT of say $500,000 a year, that's how that trade-off can take place. Next slide. Tax sharing agreement, the fact that hotels generate a significant amount of tax revenue through transient occupancy tax is used in our experience, and we've been in the middle of those deals. is used or can be used as a city's currency. In other words, a city could trade and incentivize with a developer for a return or reimbursement of some of that TOT over time. Things can be prescribed, things can be based on hurdles, things can be targeted for a certain dollar amount, and then the deal can stop. So there's lots of ways to creatively potentially structure tax sharing agreements. Next slide. EIFDs and CFDs, as I mentioned before, the creation of a tax increment financing district called Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, or even a relative of that, which is the Climate Resilience District, as I mentioned before, which is really climate driven, which may be appropriate, frankly, for the area. These can be coupled with community facilities districts, which are early dollars. And we give an example here of a financial impact, which if the project had $500 million of assessed value, there could be a certain revenue stream that's gained from property tax and VLF, your vehicle license fee, and that tax increment can be leveraged, and the leveraging of that can turn into a bond issuance at some point when the assessed values hit the rolls, and at half of that tax revenue without county participation, there could be, in the neighborhood of a $3 million EIFD bond at some point. Next slide. That's just an example. The idea of infrastructure cost report, again, is where cities can potentially assist with funding offsites or funding public improvements. And again, for a prescribed period, we use an example here of what we did in Southgate years ago. And the offsites were largely paid for by the public sector through a bond issuance. But the way we structured that public-private deal is there was actually profit participation by the city, because the city got the project off the ground by investing in offsites, and the developer recapitalized and ended up giving by design and legally, a windfall of profit participation to the city of Southgate. Next slide. So here's just a summary of all of those, and then we can wrap it up here. But it's the different incentive programs as a menu, some options to think about: cost to the city, benefits to the city, complexity to the project, and potential value to a project. I think on that note, we've done other things within our report. We actually ran some pro formas. So the report might have some more detail in it, but that was the summary presentation of the material. Also, I think within the staff report and staff packaging, there was a report that we did in 2019 that was an evaluation, a fiscal analysis, an evaluation of the proposed project at the time, which I think had 637 units and hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail, and the fiscal impact in that case, dating back to 2019, so lots of assumptions that are 5 years old per se, was such that the fiscal impact of that project as presented was about a break even. And so the notion of trying to derive additional revenue generating uses like a hotel was where that came from. And we had an estimate of what a hotel could generate. Again, could be in the neighborhood of $500,000 a year. So on that note, I can't see anybody on the screen, so I don't know whether.
Thank you. We can see you, and we see a lot of you now. Sorry, we've got a technical glitch on our end. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the challenge of Zoom. We certainly appreciate being here at 9 o'clock at night and not having eaten dinner, Jamie. Anyways, I'm just giving Jamie city manager a hard time.
We all
but
do.
I couldn't see your faces or expressions, so I didn't know whether you were tilting your head, nodding your head, lifting your hands, and saying, "What the heck are we talking about?" But anyways, we are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and work on this, and we'll get to questions right now. Councilmember
Great.
Clark, questions? Not a question. Councilmember Morgan? No? Councilmember Peterson?
I have a quick question regarding a letter we received on behalf of Merlone Geyer stating that the Cosmonaut study's fundamental conclusion is that mandates for commercial use on site, whether that use is retail or hospitality, will render a redevelopment proposal economic or uneconomic. And I didn't get that from the study or from your presentation, and I wanted to hear from you if you believe that statement is accurate.
Sure. I do like to put myself in other folks' shoes. We understand the private sector. We understand the world of development. Frankly, we understand Merlin and Geyer, if that makes sense. I also worked on the Laguna Hills Mall, just to be very clear. They were the developer. It was quite the up and down process, but the project got approved. And it was a blend of uses that ended up with residential and retail and hotel and a park and office, which is going to be a real challenge to build because the market changes. So we finally got to that project and came to fruition. Their point in the letter could very well be that, as I tried to mention during my presentation, our presentation is that residential is driving the highest land value, residual land value profit, if you will. I can't see anybody on the council. I can just see myself. So I don't know what happened to the screen. So please.
You can carry on, Ken. We can see you, although we can see you and we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it's just hard to look at myself and try to convince and communicate. So the point is that the profit that they're going to derive from development is going to come from residential. And we understand that. The profit that isn't going to come from a hotel is part of their point. And they've been saying that for a long time. But at the end of the day, a city, in our opinion, is going to be hard pressed to embrace, explore, negotiate a project that isn't fiscally sound or positive. And please, we're the one saying to the community that residential projects are not always, as a foregone conclusion, negative fiscal impacts. We don't believe that. Residential projects can be positive fiscal impacts. So the point here is that as we analyzed it in 2019, we saw that given the cost of services, and we did some interviews with some of your department heads, and we looked at the tax creation and tax value of those number of units in the mall, and our analysis showed that it was about a break even. So sometimes those are negative fiscal impacts, and other times they can be positive. In any event, the residential was a break even. So the whole point was, what can we do as a city to help drive a positive fiscal impact? And with a hospitality use, which is a good blend of uses and good compatibility with retail, as I mentioned before, and residential for that matter. And frankly, I believe there's probably market demand for a hotel use. It made sense for us to come to that as a possibility for the blend of land uses. If it isn't profitable to the developer and residential is profitable and your housing element is certified and it requires rezoning for the residential, I suppose that's where their letter's coming from. But to conclude that the project is completely infeasible, we can't really say that without analyzing it, to be quite honest.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I'm sorry if that was a long-winded answer, but there's actually a lot to that analysis. And we understand both sides of the equation, but that's the reality of what's going on as I explained it.
Appreciate that. I have a question. So in your what do you call this? The financial feasibility analysis in Exhibit 2, the residential land value multifamily. You have, you're looking at 880 units with a base rent of $3,800 a month. And then there's a note that making that 5 or 10% higher would make this a more profitable project for the developer. So with 10%, we're looking at $4,180 a month for one of these units. Is that, I guess this is an assumption that all of the units are the same price? There's no affordable units built into this?
Can't remember whether if we had an assumption of a certain percentage affordable or not. We didn't include that in the presentation. So I'd have to apologize. I can't be sure if what we included for affordable units.
Yeah, I don't see anything about affordable units anywhere in either of the financial feasibility analyses.
Okay, so I think the city policy allows in lieu payments instead of inclusionary units. So maybe that was the assumption we made. It's been many months since we did that analysis.
Okay, thank you. Is that?
That is in fact correct. For rental housing, there's an in lieu fee, and that was incorporated into their, I think, their overall model.
We could end up with 800 units that cost $4,100
That's correct,
each.
and I'm looking at it as we speak myself. You're correct. It's really a fee instead of units.
Okay. Yeah, you want to talk about what the in lieu fees are?
Sure. So when there's a development, and if it's a for rent development, they can pay an in lieu fee, which would go towards our affordable housing fund. And for rental, it's $6 per square foot, whereas typically a developer who's doing a for sale development, it's an inclusionary requirement that 15% of the overall development be deed restricted, low, very low income, so to meet our requirements.
There was discussion about the bonus floor area ratio. Didn't we already do that? For this project, didn't we already give a bonus floor area ratio as part of the housing element?
So in the housing element, we've committed to doing increased heights up to 75 feet, as well as removing the parking garages from our floor area ratio. I plan to bring that forward in 2025 for implementation into our zoning code. We just, with all the changes that we're bringing forward next at the next meeting, we just haven't had time to do that yet. So that's going to happen in 2025.
But we already approved it, essentially. It's going to happen. It's already been approved.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I will save my comments for after. All right, we will go to public. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Councilmember Peterson.
Could you expand upon when in 2025? Do you have a specific month or quarter making those changes?
So the changes need to be adopted by December of 2025.
Okay, so by the end of the year. Okay, and then I have a kind of a general question for you, Katie. Now that we have this menu of possibilities, what are the next steps in how to hone down that into actionable items and implementation?
Sure. So with the menu of items, as you just indicated, the first step is going to be updating our zoning code to reflect the changes that we've committed to. But then within the menu of changes, it's really bringing back suggestions to the council of which items you'd like to see us utilize as redevelopment tools for them, if it's just for the mall site, or if we want to do identify an area broader than the mall for any of these tax incentives, but really continuing this conversation. Now we've got a good starting point, but really continuing this conversation of which tools we'd like to use in the future. And I think the last slide that Ken provided that compares just the cost and time associated with each of these is a great tool, is a great way to compare how we can implement in the future and which ones.
Yeah, great. And to my knowledge, Merlone Geyer has not commented on any of these menu of incentives. Is right. I didn't see anything
Yeah, I
specific
think they
in their
acknowledge
letter.
them in the letter, but they don't suggest that one is better than the other in terms of helpful for them.
I wonder if we could, at least try to reach out and see if any of these options would be appropriate for them or help them to become
Yeah, I think that's
incentivized.
definitely within the appropriate next steps.
And as far as a city council direction for, taking the next steps with these possible incentives, is that going to be something that you will be bringing back recommendations, or through our discussion, just, decide which to really hone in on? A little both, maybe.
So I would welcome Ken's input on this one as well, but I think, in my experience, things like this would typically be sort of worked out through a development agreement, which can be a negotiation with the developer in terms of them saying, okay, here's what we would need to do the project. What we would need to do the project is we would need the city to help out with the offsite infrastructure, and then we would take a look and see, okay, what are the ways in which we can help out with the offsite infrastructure? And we bring back either a CFD idea or an EFID, one of these different ideas that Ken touched on. But it's really, there's kind of the proactive stuff we can do is kind of, that was the last item we were talking about, thinking about the infrastructure in the street, thinking about the zoning. And then when these specific tools, it's kind of really, usually I've seen it as kind of a negotiation with the developer where they're coming forward with their ideas on what they need to help make something really feasible. And Ken, if you have anything else to add, I'd welcome that input.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, Jamie. Certainly, couple thoughts on that. Number one, a lot has happened over the last several years, to the extent that we had a fiscal analysis of a concept plan 5 years ago. It's just really time to revisit where the market is and where MGP, where Merlone Geyer is in terms of their interest in moving forward with a redevelopment of the project. I think based on the housing element and the sort of zoning by 2025, I think that's also what they're telling the city in their letter, that their desire is of that zoning to be in effect. And in a perfect world, if the city has that flexibility, if you will, and the zoning approach, the burden is on the developer to ideally collaborate with the city. And I think it's us getting in a room, or both parties getting in a room and talking about what is today's market, what's a potential project look like, what are those challenges, financial feasibility challenges, entitlement challenges, and what's the financial gap, if there is one. And if there is a financial gap or an infeasibility, if you will, it's then exploring those solutions, right? It's understand the problem, identify solutions, and collaborate to move forward. So that's how I see it.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. We'll go to public comment now on this item. If anyone would like to make comment, now would be the time. Hi, welcome back.
Hello again. I guess this is more of a question. If the residential use becomes 880 units as part of our requirement, could that not decrease the proposed zoning density in other areas of the city?
We'll take note of that question when we finish public comment. We'll come back.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Any further public comment on this item?
Good evening, City Council. My name is Alberto Lustre. I'm here with the Carpenters Union Local 46. Used to be it's 505, and it's a great document it got put together. But just keep in mind to include some of the labor standards in the project as far as local hire, apprenticeship, and the very major thing, healthcare. A lot of the projects coming to the cities, they don't have any healthcare for the workers or the families, and apprenticeship for all the youth and then all the kids coming to school is getting harder and harder to live in the cities, even to afford rent. So I encourage you to put the some type of language to protect the labor force, and once again, local hire. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Kim Fry. I live on Bulb Avenue. I don't know, maybe this isn't the time to talk about things like this, but it's really sad to hear that there might not be any affordable units, that's for sure. It's also sad to not hear that there's not, like, when is the community going to have input? This is like a jewel of space in Capitola for a community here, and when do their ideas and what they would like to see with this space get included in the dream? I don't know. Just seems to be a lot about finances and money, and are they going to make enough profit? And I do have one question to end. 75 feet high, how many stories is that? Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to remind the council that you also have incentives or requests from the state of adding units into your city. The unincorporated area is, they have 3 projects they're working, and it's in excess of 500 units. The one at 41st and SoCal Drive, and then Thurber and SoCal Drive, and then another 90 units of senior housing on the Silver Spurs restaurant area. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. We'll start down here. Councilmember Peterson.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say I'm thankful to Cosmot and to Katie for making all this happen, and I think we have some good data to go with. And I hope that some representatives from Merlone Geyer will be able to work with us to determine which of these incentives may be beneficial to, create an economic project in today's environment. I know we have committed to the FAR and height ratio, and I, at this point, wouldn't rule out any of the proposed incentives, whatever we can, do to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you, Cosmont, for putting all this information together. As I've sat on this dais for 6 years, and the city continuously puts hundreds and hundreds of hours into this. Cosmont has put hundreds of hours. We've put a lot of money into studies and evaluation of how we can get this project done. And going back to the table with Merlone Geyer is obviously important, but I'm deeply disappointed in where we are today with the developer. We have bent over backwards as a council throughout all of this time, and it's really frustrating. And so I really appreciate what Cosmot has done in bringing these ideas forward. But where I stood in 2000, 6 years ago, was that we needed to think about our community and think about what we were building, and ensuring that as we incentivize more and more for our developer, that we're also creating equal, if not more, incentives for our community members. So if they're listening, I look forward to having them come back to the table as we discuss these as options for them, and hope that we can get a project done. And then if not, if there's any other folks out there who want to come forward, I'd greatly appreciate that as well. So thank you.
Yeah,
I also want to thank Katie and Cosmo. I think the menu is a good idea, and I think it can kind of help many people conceptualize sort of the different options that we have going on here. I definitely want to hear back from the owner developer as far as what they're possibly interested in entertaining and what we really need to do in these first few steps to move forward. Because, like Vice Mayor said, it's been a long road, and we want to make sure we're enhancing the community and not just sitting on a project, putting time and effort into something that isn't going to come to fruition. So I'm thankful to have this information, and I'm looking forward to the conversations with Merlone Geyer moving forward. Thanks.
Nice to see all the hard work put in this. I don't think it's going to go unnoticed for sure. But it does have to work out for the developer and the mall property owners along with the city. So we got to get to that point where we can all agree on something. So we need to continue working on it. I think it can be done, but no time like now to get started. We need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So first, just to answer some of the public comment questions, 75 feet high is about 7 stories, correct? 6.5, yeah. And then the question about would the density of this project potentially decrease density of other projects in the areas? I don't think that's the case, correct?
That's correct. And actually, in the state of California, you're not allowed to decrease density. That's assigned to properties. So.
Okay. Oh yeah, there will be public outreach once this project becomes a project. There was 8 years ago when I first started on the council, where we started asking people what they might be interested in. But there will eventually be public outreach. Right now, we're just looking at ways to try to get Merlone Geyer to move forward in doing something. I want to say thank you to Cosmont and to Katie. And I apologize in advance because the frustration I'm about to share is not towards you. I appreciate that they've taken the time to do this study as we've asked, and I think that they've done exactly what we've asked them to do. So thank you both gentlemen for being here tonight and for sharing this with us. I've been on this council for 8 years, and the question people most ask me about is what's going on with the mall? Why haven't we seen anything done with it? Why is this taking so long? And every year there's a new reason that I have to tell them. Well, there was a pandemic. Well, we're getting them back on the board now. Well, they've got other priorities. And I'm talking about Merlone Geyer in particular. They asked for additional floor area ratio, not including the parking garage in the floor area ratio. We did that. Then they wanted 75 feet and almost held up our housing element if we didn't give them 75 feet, and we gave them that. And then they came back at the meeting when we gave them the 75 feet and said that the amount of affordable housing was too much to make the development feasible. So we spread that out over the whole mall property instead of just on that one plot. And so now what they're saying is that commercial development is not possible at all, and it makes it infeasible. And they're saying that even the proposed financial incentives are insufficient to mitigate the risk of commercial use on the site. Well, we had no intention in all the time that I've been on council for us to tear down an economic driver in our city and turn it into just residential that's going to be $4,100 a unit for 880 unit. Who the hell is going to live here? That is not housing for teachers and firefighters and police. We've got a development here in the village that starts at $7,500 a unit. And now we're going to have $4,100 a unit for 880 units with no affordable housing and no commercial development. I'm flabbergasted and I'm frustrated. I can't even imagine the loss of sales tax revenue in that corridor by not having any commercial because it's now deemed financially infeasible after the 4 other things we were told made this financially infeasible had been addressed. So what's the next? I'm really frustrated. I'm really frustrated and I'm disappointed. When I ran for council in 2016, I was so excited to work on this project, and I've got 5 meetings left, and I know that I will not be a part of this. And it's not about me, it's about the community, but the fact that the community has waited nearly 10 years and what we're hearing just continues to be, sorry, that doesn't work for us. Well, it's not working for us that nothing is happening on this property for the last 10 years. And so forgive my frankness and my frustration, but I expected a partnership with our developer, with the owner of this property, to create a development that would be beneficial for both parties and for the community. And in my opinion, getting rid of commercial, just putting in residential that's not affordable is not what we had in mind for this redevelopment. And it's not what I saw in the conceptual plans in 2019 when they brought it to us. So that's it for me. I think there's no action on this, right? We're just receiving a presentation. Thank you, Cosmon. Again, that frustration wasn't directed to you. We appreciate the time that you've put into this.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 8D has been continued to a future meeting because I was looking for some additional information that we're still gathering, so that will come back to us at a later time. In the meantime, that's it for tonight. So until next time, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Our next meeting will be October 24th here at 6 p.m. Take care.
I've been coming here for over 50 years.
So I honestly could not give you an answer. No, it's because it's very specific.